And the dais? As in like you, Tim, Chotner, golf committee. Kent is probably going to be up here. He has, I think, only one small slide. I don't know that we need anybody else. There's plenty of board members in the room. I'd comment on them. If Mason were here, I'd ask Mason to sit up there with you, but he's away, as we know.
You're right, you get more people for this than
We do.
this is amazing.
It shows you how important golf is to the club. And if anybody tells you differently, tell them they know what they're talking about. Right? Yeah.
That is not driving.
It's 5:30 right now. Well, 5:28 maybe.
I'm going to sit over there next to him.
Hello there, Dan. What's that? I think that we want you up front. Yeah. Well, let's stretch there. You're like a wife trophy. Well, you're doing a good job. You look great. Okay. I don't believe, as I said in my meetings, you start on time because I don't believe in no one in bad behavior. Oh, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Got to do like they do, and I think it's on. There we go. Good evening, everyone. We're going to try to take our seats, and we'd like to get started here momentarily. Like now. I think we're expecting 110 people responded to come in person, and we have another 55 or so online. We probably have more interest in this than we do at the annual meeting, which I think demonstrates how important golf is to the Baltimore Country Club. So give everybody a chance to grab a seat, and then we'll get started here just in a minute. Yeah, they're online in Ireland. All right, we'll let John Hoover find a seat, and we'll use that as the start of the meeting. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm probably going to talk a little more than I should, but I think there's a lot to be heard today. There's a lot to be said, and so prepared some opening comments to set the stage for how we got here and what we're here to talk about, and then I'm going to turn the program over to Pat and Tim and others to fill you all in on the details of our plans and what we are intending to do. I believe we also have Elliot Dowling from the USGA online with us as well, and he will participate also, right, Tim? Yeah. So I think everybody knows me. I'm Tom Carroll. I'm the 37th president of the Board of Governors, and of course I want to welcome all of you to this town hall meeting to discuss some really exciting plans to improve our practice capabilities, as well as finalize the execution of our maintenance plan for the East Golf Course. You'll see in the upcoming Lifestyle magazine, and if you are a committee member, some of the information regarding the strategic plan for the club, which highlights our most important priorities. Two of these priorities are to add amenities and to take care of what we own. Tonight, we're here to present our golf membership with projects in each of these areas. And hopefully, the best part of all is we've been pursuing a unique funding mechanism that should not require member funds. Keep your fingers crossed. So I want to offer some opening comments to help our members understand the process, which brings us here tonight. I'm keenly aware that there's been quite a bit of discussion regarding these projects and thought it best to set the stage by providing, trying to stay close to the microphone here, some historical context to the plans we're here this evening to discuss. So bear with me. Let me begin by suggesting that as the president of the club, there are many imperatives that come with the title, but at the top of the list, number one is you don't want to lose an elm tree, which Marty Brunk didn't succeed at. But thankfully, we turned that elm tree into the beautiful table in the wine room. Number two is you don't want to do anything to diminish our most treasured asset, which is the number one rated East Golf Course. I understand this and appreciate this golf course very deeply. So I want to acknowledge that we unequivocally understand the solemn obligation to tend to this golf course with extraordinary care that reflects its historical significance and its majesty. And it's through that lens and perspective that we created the Green Committee in 2018 to ensure that the entirety of our golf courses received attention and resources necessary to keep them or make them exceptional. At the time the committee was formed, We believe that the best run clubs separate the golf experience from the golf courses. Thus, we formed the Green Committee as an evergreen committee of volunteers who reflect the demographic users of our golf courses and demonstrate a very high golf IQ necessary to execute the mission. And what was their mission? Their mission was to create strategic plans for 3 specific areas related to our golf facilities. Number 1, of course, is the East Golf Course. We're going to talk about this extensively. Number 2, of course, was the West Golf Course. And number 3 are our practice facilities. Prior to the development of these plans, there was no recorded long-term vision or plan in place for our members to review, comment, and support. There were plenty of opinions, and in some cases, designs, all of which got put into a file, lacking funding and/or board commitment for their execution, only to be revisited by the next golf chair with their own perspective. We wanted to change that. True to their mission, the Green Committee was formed and originally chaired by Dan Falvey and now by Pat Brady, and they produced plans in each of these areas. We're here tonight to present you with 2 of those action plans. While my intent is to comment on the East Course maintenance plan, you will also be seeing our plans for short game installation, which frankly is long overdue. The East Course Master Plan focused on 3 specific areas. By the way, the plan was designed, I believe, in 2018, and we've been executing on it for the last 4 years, Tim? Yeah. So we had 3 specific areas that required attention. Number 1 were the tees. The surface area of our existing tees are insufficient for the quantity of play that we see today. Further, tees have been added to reflect the expanded demographic of the golf membership. I firmly believe that if Tilly were alive today and designed a golf course on our land, he would accommodate the players of today. We have 5 or 6 generations of golfers playing on our golf courses. We have ladies and juniors who have the opportunity to play a championship design upon which all can be challenged and enjoy. A lot changed from the mid-20s. The second thing was drainage. You're going to hear an awful lot about weather from Tim and Pat and the impact it has on golf in this region. It seems that all golf courses in this region are adding and expanding the amount of drainage to get this excess water off the golf course as quickly as possible. And that's been the primary focus of the execution of the plan to date, although there are some other things that have been done. Tim will remind us shortly of how effective the draining works once it's installed. And then finally are the bunkers. Bunkers have a useful life of between 10 and 12 years, and ours are at or past the end of their useful life, and that needs to be addressed. The subsurface, for example, wears out and the bunkers begin to deteriorate quickly, for example. Plus you have the changing dynamics of the game, which requires some repositioning to ensure that they remain relevant with the advanced technology of today's game. The plan received board support and an annual allocation of resources of $300,000, which was an historic commitment to do that. In fact, I was at the meeting when we agreed on the $300,000, and I can recall Tim Kennelly saying, I've never had $300,000 to invest in the East Golf Course. And so we've been diligently putting that money towards improving our course since then, with a 1-year exception to do some work on the driving range. That plan was intended to be completed over a 10-year time frame. However, the facts on the ground have changed, and it's not feasible to address the bunker and tee work with an installment plan approach. It's prohibitively expensive to complete the work, so we've decided to compress the timeline and fit it into our current golf and tournament schedule. So we're looking forward for a few years. Pat will go into detail as to what our schedule looks like at the moment. This plan was designed with the specific purpose of maintaining the preeminence of the East Golf Course for our members, accommodate the expanding demographics of our golf membership, while maintaining the East Golf Course as the premier championship golf course in this area. While working through the logistics of this process, it was recommended that we also consider a new and innovative form of hybrid Bermuda grass. I know many of you are here tonight because of that issue. We are well aware of your concerns, and the purpose of this town hall is to provide the detail which has led the Green Committee to make this recommendation, make adjustments to our plan where appropriate, then ultimately decide upon the wisest selection. I've been approached by many of you asking for clarity. At the conclusion of this evening, you will hear the facts completely and directly, and there should be no further need for speculation. Let me acknowledge that our communication strategy has, in part, added to this problem. We faced a dilemma related to the financing, and that has really prevented us from being as open as perhaps we would care to be, but now's the time. And on this point, I want to be very clear. As I stand in front of everyone tonight, we do not have the funding in place for the execution of anything you're going to hear tonight. Further, while the board has approved the execution of the East Course Master Plan and the short game area, pending a resolution of our funding pursuits, we have not approved the regrassing to the East Golf Course. While we cannot commit in any detail over the funding process, other than to say that we are hopeful that both of these projects can be completed without member funding, the Board of Governors remains focused on the continued execution of the facilities master plan, and we want to reserve your capital for the next phase of that project and our existing commitments. Many of the board members are present at this meeting this evening and intend to fully listen to your comments and your perspective, which will follow the presentation. We believe that all decisions require a fair evaluation of trade-offs. A wise decision evaluates those trade-offs well. Our duty is to weigh the evidence and ultimately do what is best for BCC. And we will consider all perspectives in that process. I want to make one final comment before I turn it over to the presentation, and that is regarding process. At BCC, we are a committee-governed club. Every committee at BCC has part of its mission the responsibility to advise, advocate, and attend club events. Committee members have been selected from our population because they have demonstrated a love, of course, for BCC, a particular acumen that aligns with the committee mission, and they also reflect the demographics of our membership. The committee structure works best when members approach the committee with their ideas and suggestions, which are then handled in the committee and evaluated accordingly. Those that need board approval are elevated to the board level as a recommendation upon which the board will act. The suggestions and comments that come from this evening tonight will follow a similar process. The Green Committee, and if necessary, the Golf Committee, where the things overlap, will take note of every suggestion and comment. They will make adjustments as they deem appropriate and present the revised plan to the board for our consideration. I want to now turn the meeting over to Pat Brady, the chair of our Green Committee, and to Tim Kennelly, our superintendent, to walk us through precisely what we plan to do. Thank you all.
Good evening. I'm Pat Brady, as Tom indicated. And first off, I want to thank Tom and the board for their continued support of these proposed updates to our facility. I also want to thank my fellow committee members, Mason Champion, our board liaison, Mike O'Neill, who I know is here, Rebecca Krimsky is here, Scott Hargis, Greg Johnson couldn't be here, and a big thank you to Brett Chotner for his continued support and that of the Golf Committee. As Tom mentioned, our goal is to provide the best playing conditions for both courses for all members, regardless of skill level. The master plan that will be reviewed, we believe, fulfills that mission. And the addition of a short game practice facility will be a welcome addition for members and staff. Tim Kennelly will take us through a presentation that will address the short game area, second, the East Course Master Plan, and then finally, we'll have a discussion about our recommendation to regrass the East Golf Course. We are happy to have on the phone with us, as Tom indicated, Elliot Dowling from the Greens section of the United States Golf Association. Elliot has been consulting with us for over 10 years and has been a valuable asset concerning the challenges we face in the Middle Atlantic region. So what I ask you now is that as we go through these presentations, I know you're going to have questions. okay? I ask that you hold your questions until each section is completed, and then we will field questions about that section, okay? So without further ado, Tim, you're up.
I'm going to walk around if that's okay, not to block you over here. So, like Mr. Brady said, we're going to start out with, Mr. Carroll did the welcome, short game area, and then the East Course master plan, and then, of course, the regrassing, and then we got a few other things we're going to talk about. So before we go on, I want to actually acknowledge two of our staff members that are here today. They're going to speak a little bit as well. Actually, our superintendent of the East Course, Mike Stanton, and our assistant, Mark Jones. We're happy to have him here today. So, great. So, all right, we'll get right to it. Also, we have Kathy's here today. I don't know, is David here? There we go. So they're available for questions as well. So really, as we started this plan of the short game area, and I'll kind of walk you through just a little bit without getting too specific, but there are some boards that are around. So after the meeting, we'll certainly hang around. If you have questions, if you really want to dive into the specifics, but we know we need better practice facilities. We know that. And it's all generated, and I'll come back to this picture, from the surveys that you fill out every year from 2019, 2020. And I'm not going to read them all, but they pretty much say, there is a need. Turf's not good, facilities aren't good. So we got some catching up to do. But the question is that where do you put it? All those kind of things, this and that. And in 2020, you can see it all. So we're going to go back. So actually what we did was through our architect, Keith Foster, he actually engaged with Joanna Coe, everybody knows Joanna, and Pat Coiner to think what kind of, I'm not going to design a practice facility. So it's what do we really need? So this really generated out of Joanna and Pat, and we really settled on, where do you put this thing? Where do we have space? We got 4, 5, 6 across the road. That's not safe for this and that. So really the right side of 16 is really the best place that we could find where we could, the kids, the clinics, all this kind of thing. So to kind of walk you through it, here you have 16, here 16 west. That's right, not 16 east. Sorry. You can see, so here you can see a little dotted line, this little dot right here. There's the existing T on 16. There's the green. But to make it work, we're going to fit in. You got to shift that hole to the left, and then the T's on 17 shift as well. And then we have this path. This is an existing path. Here's 18 green to the west. So you walk down there. There's a practice putting green. All new green construction. They're going to be built just like the greens on the East Course. Grass with 007 and maybe some other newer varieties, but pretty much the same as the East construction. And then we'll have 3 large target greens, and then tight mode short grass to where you hit shots. You can practice any shot that you hit on the East Course. You're in front of 9, bumping, all that kind of stuff. So all the things that you need as far as practicing short game is going to be in this area. Also, part of the work is just getting enough space to do that. So I think the one thing with practice areas, you always find that even when you're building, the bigger the better. But we're going to squeeze every inch of this area that we can. So, and then a walk path and so some of the benefits, I think that the experiences is, I'm not going to read every which one, but Kathy and I think David would agree to a lot of these concepts that certainly going to keep better places for people to practice. Beginners, juniors, and create little 3-hole short loops. Just the opportunities are endless and stuff. So, okay. So, any questions about the short game? All right. Mrs. Tansey?
It looks like 16, someone hitting onto 16 very close to an errant shot to hit someone on 17 or to hit someone on the shipping area. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, certainly conceptually it's all packed in here, but obviously safety is going to be a big concern. There's going to be a lot of mounding here with native, fine fescue. This is still going to be a 120-yard shot. But, if somebody pulls a nasty shank, I guess it's possible. But, native here. But again, working with our architect, conceptually on here looks tight, but certainly safety is going to be a big part of what we're trying to do there. So, David, any comments, questions from you or Joe? Or from Kathy? No? Any other questions? No? Okay. Sure.
Is there truly enough room there to, when it's all said and done, be happy with what you build? Are we going to feel like it's too small? Are we going to feel like it's going to squeeze in? Or is it really going to answer or solve the problem?
Yeah, I think it's going to certainly be adequate, but what we don't show on here is that, quite frankly, the tree lines, one of the things that we're filing for permits is we're going to be removing at least a dozen trees on the right side here to get down to the, so on the right side here, the large trees are right here. And then we're processing getting permit to remove those. So when the land kind of falls off, that's what you don't see. If next time you go over there and you kind of see it levels out and then kind of breaks, we're going to basically where the brush starts. So you're going to have about 2 acres, 2.5 acres there. So I think for just short chipping, putting, that sort of thing, I think it's certainly going to be adequate. It's not going to be adequate where you can hit 180-yard shots. But if you want bump and runs and 50-yard shots and all that, we certainly think it fits a need for that. Sure.
How far is it from catty corner from one green to the other?
Let's let it 30 yards from here. So the scale, you kind of see the scale. 31 inches. Okay, it's a little blurry there. But here, if you're hitting here to hitting here, it's probably 30 or 40 yards. So, and if you're up top here and you want to hit over here, it's probably 60 or 70 yards. So some of the concerns where people are just hitting all day and they're can't see it hitting from the practice area over to 16 green. You're just not going to hit those kind of shots. So, sure.
Are you going to build this before the decision for the grass is made? Or is it potential that you're going to build it and then maybe regrass the east and then go back and change the grass?
Ideally, is to do the Bermuda here, because as you know, when people are standing there all day and hitting divots, you're not going to get recovery. If it's bent grass, it's going to be nothing but divots, and there's no recovery. So it'd be our thoughts that we have bent grass on the greens, and the rest of it's just tight Bermuda grass. It's where you can get divot recovery and that sort of thing.
Tim, how?
Sure.
Tim, approximately how many people will be able to utilize this space at any given time?
Yeah, I think that's an operational question. I think David and Greg are going to have to work out. And I think we have Nick on the phone, don't we? Or is he just,
He is on the
Is
phone.
it 5 people?
Yeah.
Is it?
No, I think it's more than that, but that's the question that I can't answer. But that's certainly going to be a component with it, certainly, where you don't want, and operationally, I think it's for Greg and his team to figure out.
I just had a question on that, the land on the right, of it, how much do we own further into the woods? And actually, as you come up, do we have other options in their land that we own on that road? How far over is our ownership?
We own quite a bit, actually, but I don't think the club wanted to go to the right of 50. I don't think we wanted to go this route, like right of the green.
About 15, I was really.
Oh, to the 16? There's some power lines over here, so we go well past the power line. So it's certainly not an issue of our land and this and that. We own plenty of land, but we're kind of,
Wondering if we had more options.
yeah.
You really don't, Mrs. Antonides. We, as part of this, we met with the neighbors. And the neighbors obviously have significant concern in terms of erosion and runoff and different things like that. So as part of this, we need to be sensitive to the concerns of our neighbor too. And so taking this almost right to where the power lines is, as Tim indicated, right where things break, that's really where we need to be able to stop. Tim, you had Mr. Goodyear.
Yeah, Mr. Goodyear.
If someone asks a question, can you repeat the question so that's on the video?
Sure.
So thanks for this. It's really been a meeting, it's much needed. I'm sorry if I missed this. Was this an additional short green practice area? What happens to the practice area?
Yeah, the question was, is this an additional one, or what happens to the other one that we currently have over here, the chipping area? And I'll cover that in the next set of slides. But, yeah. Mr. Goodyear.
I think Ken answered it, but my question is, that we have community approval. I think
Yep.
The question is community approval of the neighbor, and they've certainly been engaged, they've been part of the discussion, and certainly, and I think that they're still feeling the effects of 30-some years ago when the West Course was built, and so that's why we've engaged experts that's dealing with stormwater management, all those sort of things, and that'll all be addressed. And certainly Ken will communicate that with the neighbors,
For sure.
so, and that's a big part of it.
Tim, my question is, so this has budget approval?
Mr. Carroll, the question was, this has budget approval.
Approved pending financing, John.
Okay, so the other word going around is that the county has been slow moving on the permits. Is that an issue, and with our contacts at local and state levels, can that be improved?
I can address that.
Yeah.
We are fortunate to have some great relationships with the county. The question was, where are we with permitting, and is the county slow rolling this? Absolutely not. There is stuff that you have to deal with within the county itself. We're fortunate to have the relationships that we are to help us get things moved through the county in an expeditious fashion, and we've absolutely been doing that. But the process to get things through the county, even under the best of circumstances, still takes time. So in the best of circumstances for this year, we hope to have permits, I think the week of October 7th.
So a quick follow-up, if we get that and we have funding and it's approved, Tom, is this done over the winter, ready for next spring?
This is a project that we want to start sometime, when we would do this in the summertime because we're putting down this hybrid Bermuda in the fairway sections of that area, and that grass needs hot weather to grow.
And the other part of that too, Mr. Hoover, is McDonald and Sons, who will do the construction, and Tim can tell you all about this. We need their best crew, and we want their best crew. So by this point, initially, we had hoped to have this started middle of July, but obviously, as Mr. Carroll mentioned, the funding source hasn't been as easy as what we would have hoped. So we've now had to continue to push this on, so that may not leave us with McDonald's best crew. So this may have to get delayed a little bit longer.
This is not intended to sound like a rhetorical question, but are you using this as an opportunity to improve hole 16?
The question is, are we using this to improve hole 16?
It will help that situation if you don't like holes.
I will say that, yeah.
I'm just trying to be politically correct, just say it's not my favorite.
But it's a brand new golf hole that Mr. Foster has designed for that.
It'll be the best hole in the course. But the question will be is that, look, it's going to be a new green, it's going to be new construction, it's going to be different. But you don't want to go back and put Pencroft on it. The tee's going to be better because it's out of the woods, out of the shade. But you're going to have a nice modern hole there on a 30-year-old golf course.
So you said, so we're gonna be putting the new Bermuda hybrid on this. I understand that, I like to chip on the grass that I'm chipping on the course, I get that for the maintenance. But with that being the case, are we gonna use this as like we have this for a year before we decide to put what we do on the big course? Is that like are we gonna do that to feedback on how it plays with more members? Is that an idea? To do this first regardless, and then come to a
The
decision?
scheduling of this has not been figured out yet, of where we're gonna start first, whether we start with the master plan and get that done first. To Tom's point, it all depends on the funding as it comes in and how we go and the staging of this. So I thought they could hear me. So I hope that answers your question. So it all depends on funding, the timing, the scheduling, and we're up in the air on that right now.
Tim, Mr. Shelley over here.
So if everything's dependent on the funding that you're contemplating doesn't come through, will you then turn to the members and impose an assessment, or will you drop the plan as it currently stands?
So the question is, if the funding falls through, is it a member assessment, or where do we go from there?
You notice this?
Good question. I don't know what the answer to that is because we really have confidence that our process will be successful. However, the process that the club should be following relative to maintaining our facilities and adding amenities where they're appropriate has to be funded, and it has to be funded by members. So we haven't talked about that. We haven't designed a plan for that, but I can assure you that the appropriate maintenance of what we own is a major priority for the Board of Governors right now, as well as continuing to add amenities. And we've seen how valuable that can be. I mean, here we are sitting in a clubhouse that you could almost call as a transformational event, and I think the numbers are approaching 2 times. Now, it required a significant investment by all of us, all of you as members, but we do see what happens when you invest in your clubs for the long term. And pretty much all the data that exists within the club industry suggests that the healthiest clubs in the country are those that have a continued, defined, and disciplined process about adding amenities and taking care of what they own. So stay tuned for that. But if you have a 4-leaf clover, put it under your pillow tonight, and that might be helpful. But stay tuned.
Indirectly, we talk about funding as if it's nebulous, but indirectly, it's gonna come to us anyway. So, are you looking for funding because we're trying to, take a loan out, or are you looking at different options with members?
You know, I really want to answer the questions in detail about the funding, but there are reasons why we're being somewhat obtuse about the question. And I'd prefer to actually stay that way if I may. They're good questions, and at some point in time, hopefully in the very near future, as this becomes clear, it'll all make sense. Okay?
Anybody else? Go ahead.
First of all, thanks for the presentation, and thanks for encouraging us to invest in the future of the club. It's nice. I'm curious to know what happens to the old practice facility. Are there plans to sort of leave that there, or are we repurposing that?
Yeah, the question was the plans for the old facility and actually the current facility. So, and it'll be addressed. I have a slide coming up here for that. So, okay. All right, Ms. Tansey.
A couple of questions or comments that came up about the size of this, I think are really important because the current facility, if there are like 3 people using it, you feel crowded and you feel like you shouldn't really be there. And this looks like you've got 4 areas to which you can hit. And are there enough bunkers to be able for several people to use? Are we gonna feel crowded?
So the question is, are we going to feel crowded in this new short game area? Keith designed this with knowing that there is going to be a lot of people probably very interested in using it. So although the scale does not show it, we feel very comfortable that this area will be able to accommodate many members at one time.
So I think if you look at this, as Tim mentioned, this area is about 2.5 acres. So if you think that an acre is 45,000 square feet, you're over 100,000 square feet compared to what we have today. That's even approaching the combination, that's less than what we have on the driving range combined. So if you just look at this on a square footage basis, we're going to be able to accommodate a lot more folks in a much safer manner than what we have today.
Anybody else? Are we good?
Elliot, any thoughts from Elliot? Can you chime in, Elliot?
No thoughts. I heard, I couldn't hear all the questions, but I heard you mention grass, and I would maintain the Bermuda grass on the floor, just as you have your practice tee and your other practice areas and west tees, for obvious reasons. The plan looks great. Tim and I, you and I and other club leaders there have been talking about the need for practice tees, short game for 10 years. So it's a need that I know you guys want, and so I'm confident it'll be used. So you need to build for that. Bermuda would be that answer. No, Tim, and everything we've looked at, we've walked it several times together. It's a really good plan, and it's a good location for it.
Okay, move on. Okay, so what to do with the other area? So the timing would be that you would always have a place to chip or putt. So say whenever it is you're doing construction over there and doing that, the current facility would be there. Once that's finished over there, then what we would do is address this, and this is your current putting green right here, real small. And what it does is we complete the tee work, lower it down to grade, almost double the size of the tees, and we'll talk about tees a little bit later. What we're also going to do is almost triple the size of that putting green. The one thing is just start. I mean, you've been out here. If you have a 36-hole event or an invitational, you can't all putt on 6 little holes in the putting green, and you can't putt. You build the green like 9 green, you get some slope. So the goal would be to practice and have a little putting course and just be able to have some slope on the green to practice what you see on the golf course. So get this thing a lot bigger in size and scope, just like what you have greens on the East course. And then also you can see the scoreboard gets moved a little bit, just repositioned. Cart path gets repositioned, and fit a tee in the back there, and then still preserve this space because we have a fireworks event that we need that space for. So be mindful of that, right, Kent? Yes, sir. That's right. So. Again, we certainly acknowledge that, and we heard that loud and clear with Joanna and Pat, that the current facility is not good. But this is kind of the plan of the future. And again, this is more putting, and over there on 16 is more chipping and stuff. But this would be done when the other one would be completed. They wouldn't be done simultaneously. So, all right. Any questions about this one?
Yeah, so this looks great. My question is there sometimes like where you play, it's convenient just to hit some chips. The one thing that while it's not big, a lot of people go there just to kind of hit a few
Right.
up. So I love the idea of big one. There's so much space over there that I would think that there might be the ability to have like kind of like a warm-up one before you play. I like that idea. I don't know if we can chip on that like before we play or not, or if that's totally off limits, but that
Yeah.
would be my only thing. I'd like to have one.
Yeah, I think this certainly isn't written in stone, but if there's an area, whether it's here. But the one thing I think we don't want to do is start hitting full chips where balls are in the road and safety and all that kind of stuff. But if it's just a little chip and stuff like that, I don't think that's unreasonable and stuff. So, all right. Okay. All right. So one of the things too, I think we're going to the master plan.
We're under the master plan?
We're on the master.
You'll go up again. Let me flip this back. So the master plan. A lot of the work that's going to be performed in the master plan is maintenance work, as Tom indicated, with repositioning of tees and fixing all the bunkers up. We've worked with Keith Foster on this plan extensively, along with Tim putting his input in. And we also have input from a gentleman by the name of Philip Young. If you don't know Philip Young, he's an expert on Tillinghast golf courses. Our goal is always to hold true to what Tilly wanted on the golf course by still making it playable for all skill levels, for the low handicap, for the high handicap, and just be able to have everybody have fun on it, okay? This plan was partially started in 2019 or 18, as Tom indicated, and we've had starts and stops on it. But in order to finish it, we really need to accelerate it. We need to put the pedal on it, and that will require us shutting down the East Golf Course for a period of time. So that's what our plan is down the road. As you are all aware, we have several national championships coming to this club, which we are all very excited about, I hope. And although these changes are being made, they're not being made for those championships. They're being made for the membership so that we all can enjoy the golf course more. It will make it, in some cases, more challenging for those highly skilled players, and it will make it more fun for all of us together. So, Tim, master plan.
So this is data from the American Society of Golf Course Architects. And just like your homes, your roof's got a useful life, your air conditioner, all this kind of stuff. So So really a lot of the stuff that we're doing is just maintenance. You can see, greens, 15 to 30. Well, what's the discrepancy? Well, if you're in Florida, 12 years, 12 months out of the year, a lot of times they regrass greens, every 4 or 5 years, just depending on thatch, this and that. 2014, we redid the greens here on the east, so I think we're gonna be good for a while, but, West Course, 1988, it's gonna be 30 years, assuming to build correctly and all that sort of stuff. So you can see going through the whole thing. Bunker sand, a lot of clubs just replace their sand. Bunkers about 10 to 12 years. 2006 was the last time we did bunkers on the East Course. So, but the sand, sometimes clubs just replace the sand every 5 to 7. And you can see irrigation, 2006 is when we did it on the East Course, 1988 on the West Course. And all the other things that naturally wear out, 5 to 10 years for cart pass. And some of our cart pass have been out there a little bit longer than 5 to 10 years, right? To come to that. So this is a general use of life. All right, so the enhancement plan, as we call it, you see all right, but it was created in 2019. And like Mr. Carroll said, was I got $300,000 a year. And the original thing was we went to McDonald and Sons and with Keith, and we basically did the plan about tees. We looked at bunkers, we looked at some other little things, and it was like $1.5 million. And then, as you know, in 2018, remember we had 75 inches of rain, we had a record rain, and we're committed to actually a drainage plan. We're installing drainage for that, so that we can prepare for those years that it's really wet, so that, we want irrigation when it's dry, you put water on the golf course, but we also want to get water off the golf course as fast as possible. So we got a plan, and that was about $1.5 million. So that's how we came up with, well, $300,000 a year times 10, $3 million. All right, and then COVID hit, right? And then inflation hit. So you imagine what $300,000 worth now, right? And year one, we did all the drainage. If you remember, 3 fairway used to be a water bed. Remember, left to 7, if you drove your car through there, you probably get it stuck. 10, 11, so the drainage flat out works, but it's expensive. And what we did this year on number 1 and number 2 is really paying dividends. So as you can imagine, we also did some fairway extensions. We planted some trees, this and that. So, and then in 2021, instead of doing the $300,000 on the golf course, we did the work on the range. And then just last year, we did the drainage on 1 and 10, and also some of the work, the regrassing between 3 and 8. So money goes pretty fast in the golf course world today. A lot of our contractors are booked out. Golf is booming right now. Renovations, constructions. Pat talked about McDonald and Sons. They're booking up to 2025, 2026. And to get the best teams, the best crews is expensive. But so that's kind of where we are with that. And again, the collaboration, originally 2019, and the plan has evolved. We've actually had some revisions with COVID. People play a lot more golf. We found our tees are just too small for the amount of play we got, and we'll talk about the amount of play further. And last winter, we updated it again to include not only tees, repositioning bunkers, but also we're going to kind of the elements we can talk about, but also reintroducing a lot of the Tilley features. I think the one thing with Philip Young is looking back, and he helped us identify some bunkering, like behind number 1, there used to be a bunker back in the 20s, and then between 32, they built it back in. There was a bunker on number 6 fairway, so you hit it over the barn, hit it straight, hit it into a bunker, and we're going to show that. But also taking the time to reposition, bunkering, putting sand back behind 8, 13, 14, 16. Also reintroducing that fairway bunker on number 6. And then tees as well, enlarging tees, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we want them softer, natural, and doing some repositioning, and we'll detail it as well. But I certainly encourage you to look at the maps and the plans. That's got a lot of the detail there as well. Also fairways. We got wide fairways, but we're going to make them wider because Tilley's fairway is even bigger. So we're going to add, we have about 32 acres of fairways now. We're going to add about 4 or 5 more acres of fairways, make them more playable, get some of the fairways closer to the tees, but also widen them as Tilley's intention was. Then also continue to modify. You can see on the back some of the boards, it's got yellow. We're going to add more of the fine fescue native areas. Drainage, going to continue with drainage plan. Also, we're going to show you number 12 tee, which Tilley's intent was to never have we got a drain pipe going under the tee, but returning that to his original intent. And also paths that are out there so you don't see them, they're not in your line of sight. Not adding more paths, but replacing them and get them in the proper place and this and that. First tee and then and doing some planting along Mays Chapel Road and even left of 7 and 12. So, and then reintroduce the walking paths. Okay, so here's, so you can see this is a photo between, I think they determined between 28 and 32. This is, so we got number 8. This is the big bunker on number, this is actually 7. Everybody can see that. And like Mr. Brady said, certainly it's an honor for me to, and I think one of the things is you want to preserve and protect this gem. And so it's my responsibility, certainly we all take it seriously, our team, that to pass this on from generation to generation, because there are very few really true Tilly-esque things. So working with Mr. Young and Keith to really preserve and protect that's quite an honor for me as well. But you can see 8, the big bunker. Now that was shifted up in 06. 7 stayed the same, but that bunker right there, you can see it. It's not an intent. That's why it's important that we show you, because we're not trying to make the golf course harder. We're just trying to reintroduce the hazard that Tilly originally intended. Here's the cross bunkers on 6. And we think that's 5 fairway. That bunker's probably always been there. But you can see the tee is way up. And then years later, if you read Tilly stuff, they moved it back and stuff like that. So that's going to be reintroduced. And you can see on number 12 there, the creek was always to reintroduce that creek there. So walk path, there's a walk path, 8, like almost 9 feet wide, real tight cut. So that would be the goal, to do the plan. Also, one of the things we do is we are going to increase the overall tee space, but we got to get the proportions right as well. So one of the things, this is number 11. This is a good example. So number 11, you can see, certainly like Mr. Brady, there's a lot of people, a lot of different skill sets, this and that. And I think the club's done a pretty good job of playing it forward. So I think that probably most of our rounds, pretty good playing for those number 2 markers or the white marker. But when you go, this is number 11, the tee's so darn small, we're just wearing it out. So I think part of this plan addresses, we got all this tee space here, there's not a divot on it. We're still gonna have, but does the championship tee have to be that big? So we're gonna reallocate some of that size and space to where everybody plays, get it to the right proportion, so we're not wearing out tees. Also changing the angles a little bit, so that, move it left, move it right, see, right side, left side, all that kind of stuff, so. All right. Any questions regarding the East Course Master Plan? And I think I will go through, in some of the bunkering, I think 60% of the bunkers are going to stay where they are. And about 40% of the fairway bunkers are going to be, people just hit it so darn long anymore. And the last time we did an adjustment, say on fairway bunkers, I think the average driving distance in 2006 was probably 260 yards. And now, depending who you are, but 300 yards is, so some of the bunkers are getting shifted, moved, repositioned. But like I said, 60% around greens are going to stay where they are. They're just going to tie in a little bit more. We're going to tear out the sand, new drainage, that sort of thing, freshen them up a little bit.
Another quick question. So,
Sure.
Did we remove those bunkers, just to save money before? Because I think they look great. I mean, I think the suggestions you're making look great. I mean, number 6, what a massive improvement. Again, it's addressing that whole need becomes unique. But I just wanted to tell you, everything I saw was perfect. I think that makes perfect sense.
So the question was, did we, as far as the club, fill in the bunkers in those areas? I think that's the big question, because I think when talking with Phil Young, I think Tilly went to back in the day in the 20s, you spent all that time doing that grading. And the question is, did you run out of money with the Great Depression? You spent all that time shaping and doing that work and not to put sand, because behind 6 you have a bunker. You have in some of the areas. So I think the consensus was that the intent would be there, so let's finish it off and do that. But
It could have been there too at some time, and maybe in the 40s or 30s they filled them in for economic reasons. But those forms are definitely for sand.
and behind 1, you never see that, but that's on his plans as well. And that
Tim.
car path gets shifted and stuff.
Tim, over here.
Yeah, yes, sir. Oh, go ahead. Yes. 14, we did, so we did some work on 14, like 7 green, we expanded it back a little bit. And so we did a little bit. So we really didn't do any repositioning per se in fairway bunkers. Yeah, just slightly. Yeah.
Master plan didn't start till 19.
Correct.
We had a big project on 14.
The question is, why didn't we do some of this work that you see here in 14? And I think Keith would be a great one to answer this, but I think a lot of this stuff was the club, I think he's ready to be a little bit more aggressive with some of this stuff. I think on 6, I'd be happy to show the plan, but that right bunker, there used to be 2 bunkers there. Now it became 1, they planted some trees there. Now, the intent is to squeeze the bunker a little bit tighter to the fairway, place a little bit more demand on that shot. So I think you're seeing a little bit of that, but maybe 10 years ago, maybe the club wasn't ready for that.
I think it's funding.
And some of that.
You know, we had so much money to do the greens and stuff, and then it was.
I think Mr. Williams too, as Mr. Carroll pointed out earlier, the fact now that the club has a master plan, that it's something that we didn't have for those golf courses. So before it was really at the whim of the golf committee and whatever changes they felt they needed to make at that particular time. So there was a concerted effort when we put the green committee together to have that master plan so that it was an enduring plan that would survive, you know, basically all of us.
Yeah, and I think more of the architecturally, I think the intent now is to finish. We've been at this for 20 years now. Keith's been our architect for 21 years. That there's a lot of business that's left to take it all the way back to what the intent is. This just kind of finishes that, I think.
Is the financing that's contemplated to continue to cover the short game area, the master plan work, basically the entire package, or is it just a portion?
So the question was, how's the financing? Is it just master plan work, or so I can answer this. This has a price tag, and the short game area has a price tag. So it's 2 different components.
Does the financing areas contemplate
It does.
addressing both?
It does.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how much it's gonna be. We have to do the short game area, it's about $1.6 million. And to do the master plan's about $4.5 million.
So you guys are talking about everything you just said, expanding the fairways, you know, repositioning bunkers. And one of the things that's coming up is hosting all these championships, you know, which the East Course is a championship golf course. That's what it's always intended to be.
Yep.
What's the defense gonna be? Like, we're expanding everything, and you know, where is the championship component to it? If it's gonna be firmer, it's gonna be faster, it's gonna play shorter, the fairways are gonna be wider.
And it's gonna be longer.
Those sound like all playability.
And the golf course is gonna be longer. There are some back tees that are in this plan if you wanna take a look at it. There's several back tees in the plan. They're gonna make the golf course more challenging for your skill set, okay?
Yeah, but I guess in general, I mean, we've lost a lot of things over the last few years. We lost the tree on 2. We lost the tree on 3. We removed the fairway in front of 2.
That's-
Green.
okay.
These are all things that, you know, gave the East Course its character that, in my opinion, helped propel it to be the best course in the state. I just want to know what sort of things, what sort of defenses we're going to put back in, as opposed to making it more playable for everybody and potentially harder play from the back tees.
I think that we are adding new bunkers or moving the bunkers that exist more into your line of play and removing them from other people's line of play. I believe that when we talk about the grass, we're gonna talk about firmer and faster, which is gonna have the ball running off into areas that you may not wanna be in. If it's soft, as you know, as a good player, you bomb a drive when it's wet out there, it hits and goes, doop, and you're there. I believe with a firmer, faster fairway, that becomes a challenge for a better player. The golf course that we're talking about is true to what Tillinghast wanted, and that's always been the goal of the club, is to restore it to the way Tilly had it. So that's where we want to take it.
It's a fair question, Mike, but I also want to comment that we got the tournaments that we have, the 2 USGA events the Big Ten, and of course the Western AM. And none of the entities that brought those events to BCC have asked us to do anything with the golf course. They like the golf course the way it is. Now, they're aware of some of the changes we're going to make, but this plan was designed and created before we even formed a tournament committee and started to pursue those. So could this golf course be made harder over time to attract an even higher level event? Perhaps. But what we have, we're happy with. And the USGA didn't ask us to do anything, and Elliot might comment on that. And the Western Golf Association hasn't either.
The question is, do any of these championship events generate any revenue? I would say they do not generate any revenue for the club, okay? We're not holding them to generate revenue.
No.
You will invest in these tournaments.
I've heard a lot of comments tonight about how we want to make the course more playable for everyone. I personally think we've done a poor job on the East Coast of making it playable for many of our senior shorter hitters. A lot of the seniors don't even play the East Course anymore; they play the West Course only. And it's not just because of the card pass, because they find it was too difficult. And I think that's a shame because they joined the course, they joined this club with the idea they could play a great championship course. And we've made it, we fought, we resisted making another set of tees. We put in a couple of gold tees, not enough. It's just too long, too hard. And it could be made easier by just adding some tee boxes and making some of those holes shorter. And I know there's a lot of resistance to that, and I don't understand that.
You want that one?
Yeah, well, I can say as far as tees, there's, the plan is for a new tee on, forward tee or number 2. There's going to be a new forward tee in the plan for number 3's going to shift it to the right a little bit, but that's going to be still up there. If you look at the plans, a lot of the tee on 4 is going to get shifted forward because you get more space, so that's you're going to get a little bit shorter there. 6? No, we can't build another tee there. Exactly. So one thing about the maintenance plan too is all the tees are going to be stripped. They're going to be tore up. We're going to have drainage underneath them. We're going to have 6 inches of mix. So they're going to be big. They're going to be level. Unlike when we did the work on the west, and we'll talk about that too, that was just more of a regrassing project. But these tees are all going to be rebuilt. Drainage, all that sort of stuff, so proper. So also new tee on 10 forward tee.
9
9
moves forward. It's bigger, moves forward.
So pretty much all of them get repositioned, they get moved around, but new tees. But 18.
When we do the master plan.
Right. So as far as new tees on, look, I'll be frank, 6, 14, 18. Nothing looking at it with Keith, I don't think there's an area that, you're gonna, if you redo the fairways, I think the opportunity at that time is to soften, level some areas on the fairways and have part of the tee on that fairway, just on those holes.
I just have a question, and first I want to say, happy to validate to be here tonight, and she's sitting on my shoulder. We really want to thank the complement for all the time, Brett, for your support and Tom's support. And the ladies are truly enjoying the forward tees. We really are. I can't tell you, we may not have made a big joyous
thank you. But I will say that as part of the work, every tee is gonna get redone and,
I want to acknowledge that at the annual meeting, Kathy brought up the forward tee situation, and I think there were two specific things that were on her mind that day. One was that we continue to add forward tees, and there are more forward tees to come. Second request, and I had, at that time, invited her, and here we are as a forum, but the comments don't have to stop after tonight. We're a ways away from executing this plan, so if any of you have ideas on ways that we can improve the plan, bring those ideas forward. They will wind up in the Green Committee, and if necessary, the Golf Committee, because they're very related in some areas. But the other request that Kathy made, and Tim, I'll let you comment on this, was that we have these discs in the fairways, and they're often on uneven surfaces. And so I want Tim to address what we plan to do in that particular area.
so I think in those areas, if you elect to, whatever we do with the fairways, or if we're gonna be shut down at the time, we'll just strip the sod and you're just gonna regrade the area to create a nice flat area, not just a little flat area, but an area that provides a nice teeing surface that's appropriate to the size that you have on all the other tees, So I think that's what we do.
number one of the West, for example.
Yeah, but and I think the thing with Keith is to make it look natural, like it's always been that way. The one number one, it kind of pops up and looks like a little pimple sticking up and doesn't hold the grade very well.
In that theory.
In that field, absolutely. But if you strip a big enough area, you can make it to where it's functional, it's level. You don't feel like you're teeing off the side of a hill. And you'll see on 18, when you'll see the plan, there's a little place for front left where we tend to do that as well. So 17 gets 17, yeah. So 17 is a big shift. Currently, it's kind of stuck in a hole over there by the house and everything. So that whole tee complex moves up on the top of the hill, kind of the same line as that we have on the back tee. So it kind of gets it out, gets some air movement up that way, but also to where you feel like you're hitting it downhill a little bit instead of hitting it uphill. So, and the tee space, it almost doubles the space and everything. So that's a big change as well, a big move position. Ms. Schultz?
Yeah, thank you. And Barb, I just need to reiterate, I'm the chair of the 9-hole ladies, and thank you for all that your emphasis that you're putting on that, the ladies, especially 6. And I would say maybe first talk about 9. I mean, that's dome. And it's not 5T is not a ladies tee. Now that we've gotten to the numbers, that's hopefully every person in this room someday will have the privilege of getting to play there because they'll still be playing golf when they're 70 years old, right? And maybe playing with your grandchildren, whatever. So it's everybody's tee box. Number 9, the 5T, and it's domed. I mean, that's getting addressed. So that's going to get addressed. So 6, what is the plan for 6? Because I mean, we want a full access as a member to all of the 9s, and 6 is difficult. And some days it's over there, some days it's over here, and I understand there's safety. We've been talking about this for a long time. We're doing this practice thing, and we're just going to shift the 17T over a little bit. We say that very easily, and yet, what's the plan for 6? And thank you for giving us this opportunity to put it all out there and let us say our piece.
Yeah, I think the question is, what's the plan for 6 forward tee? So, Brett, you haven't spoken up for today. I know we talked about this last year.
All right, so on 6, obviously, there's really no place to put a full access tee where it's going to actually fit. We have to keep the integrity with the architectural beauty of that particular hole. So on 6, we're going to take that area. We already moved the disc over to a flatter area, and the goal is to flatten it out more when we do this, to create, as Tim was saying, to create more of an ability to put, a couple tee markers out there. So that's the goal. You can't slide it up in between 5 and 6 because then you got people hitting right into you. You can't shift it over into the high grass, but we know that it needs to be up in that general area so that you can have the ability to hit your second shot over the cross bunkers, right? And there's just really nowhere there. It's a very, very challenging area. It's like on 14. Where do you put an extra tee marker there so that those shorter hitters have the ability to carry the cross bunkers? And so we're gonna have to really use the fairways in some instances.
I had a conversation with Rebecca, who sits on our committee, and she came to me about number 7. Okay, and so we've already pulled that fairway back to the tee. So we're gonna look at, in that flat area that's at the end of there, cleaning it up and putting a tee in there for people, putting a couple of discs in there. Not gonna build a tee, but clean it out, just because all the tees, to Tim's point, are going to grade. They're all going flat to the ground. Okay, so it will look like it's a teeing area. Okay, so we're aware of the need, but it is a championship golf course, and we're very tuned to that piece of how we respect it.
Beautiful from where we play. So if I can't reach every green two, I can say, hey, for me, I got a handicap, okay, and it's a par 82 for me. You know, I want to play the golf course from where it is. I don't want to see the golf course altered all over the place. You know, I mean, I understand we have to.
To your point, Jim, we all get older, we all get weaker, we lose distance, and it becomes a problem for everybody. I don't mean this, you can't build a tee for every player that plays golf, or we'd have teeing spaces all over the place. So.
And that's actually part of the reason why we introduced the numbered tees in all the different combinations, so that any player from any ability can play from whatever distance they want. So there's tons of options out there, and we're going to continue to get better, especially on the East Golf Course. So if you want to play from the 2 tees, Jim, play from the 2 tees. If you want to play a 2-3, great. If you want to play from the 4, 5 combo, you got tons of different options. If you want to come up with your own option, feel free. We're all, I'm all ears, okay?
Regrassing the fairways is part of the course master plan, correct?
It's been proposed. So it hasn't been approved. Lost your mind. Has not been approved, like Mr. Carroll said. But the question was, Mr. Brady said, look, if we're going to do all this work, the bunkers, all this kind of stuff, you're going to have to shut down for a little bit. And the opportunity is, well, look, if we're going to shut down, you all don't want to go through this 2 years later, right? So the question is while we're shut down, do we take advantage of that, and do we look at the regrassing? So.
Is the grass that we're proposing the same grass that's currently on the driving range?
Correct. We're going to talk about.
Awful?
I know it looks awful. We're going to talk about that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ballpark old time frame for
So because if what we're proposing is the Bermuda grass, you want to sprig it and install it when it's like this, just hot and nasty. So you're talking about if you start the end of 1st of July, June, 8 to 10 weeks. You can get the fairways done, get them all grown in. So the thought would be we'd go up to the end, July-ish, 8 to 10 weeks, and then open up 9 holes. And then while we're doing that, we're still doing bunker work. We're doing tee work, native work, all the other stuff. Correct.
To have the whole thing done, Joe.
Yeah.
We do 9 holes, one period, 9 holes. So we want to have 9 holes back open.
couple of real quick ones. In one of those pictures with the walking paths that you showed earlier, it looked like they were fairway walking paths, which I've never seen before. That looked ridiculously awesome. Is that in the plan to do like known fairway
That's right.
walking paths that I've never seen on any golf course before in my life? Yeah. That's awesome. So you're probably following Columbia.
Correct.
Columbia doing the same walk path.
Yeah.
And they put their Tahoma in the walking.
They put the home in the walking path. What I can say, and I hope this is, I'm very frustrated with this place as you all know, but I think what we did in Ohio, I think the drainage has far outseeded the golf course that we play out there. With $3.5 million in, I think the drainage is imperative for us to have that great golf course. That might challenge the But I think it's just, the drainage is so important to this.
Brett, that is top thing. We're very keen on the drain. And we're gonna continue.
My other question was, for 15, I know that there's a lot of people that like to cut it into, like hook it into 16, and that's been like a little bit of a problem. So that, you know, when we have a back tee box, it doesn't really affect the people that play the back, but for those white boxes, or middle boxes, is there anything that you're doing to discourage that, or put like more fescue in between, or?
Look at the plan.
Can you make sure we
Yeah.
restate the questions too?
Yeah, so the question is on 15 East, people tee off, and some of them, you know, try to hit it on 16 fairway, right? So from the back tee, it's not really an issue, but from the white tee, you know, what are we gonna do for that? And certainly, there's certainly no intent to do out of bounds and stuff like that. But I think on the plan, one of the things is, number one, the tee, you flop it to the left, and all of a sudden, you take the left edge, becomes the right edge. That'll take care of that, pretty much. Now, unless you can hit a big hook and all that sort of stuff. But also, one of the things in Tilly's plans, if you look at his old plans, it's called them rough, rugged mounds. So at Hell's Half Acre, you got the mounds and all that kind of stuff. You know, the sand, but Tilly had those, a lot of it's probably scattered all over the place. So between 15 and 16, we're gonna have some rough, rugged mounds, and we're gonna have fine fescue like the Great Hazard. So if you go left, where that bunkering is, first of all, the bunkers are gonna be repositioned, but then also there's gonna be rough, rugged mounds introduced with the fine fescue. So if you hit over there, look, we can't stop you if you hit a great hook and you hit it over there, but it's gonna certainly be a lot more challenging versus standing up there and hitting it straight on 16. You're also gonna see some of those rough, rugged mounds on the right of 14 or 15 to introduce that back on the golf course as well. And perhaps even left of 5 as well, hit it left on 5. So, but simply just flopping that tee on 15, we think will help with that quite a bit, getting a little bit tighter to the tree line.
Process the procedure for approval as membership. Go to a vote,
The question is the process procedure for the membership. Does it go to a vote, et cetera, et cetera?
The process is a procedure.
Well, if the plan's already been approved, our bylaws require us to take the sale of, is it more than 1 acre, Gail?
It is.
To a membership vote. Otherwise, this is a decision that resides in the Board of Governors. Now, we approved the plan. Now, it's been tweaked a little bit, and of course, we're getting ready to talk about grassing, which I know is of great interest to a lot of you here. That hasn't been approved yet. So we want everybody to understand the process that got us to this point in time, why we're considering that decision. And I'm anxious as the president of the club to assess member reaction and to be sure that it's a very wise decision for us long-term. And there's, based on a lot of conversations that have come my way, I think that after tonight, you'll have a very good idea of all of the factors that we're considering related to regrassing the golf course. And it's more than just firm and fast, just for everybody's information. And we'll get to that, I think, next, right, Tim? Are there any other questions? Yeah, there's one more back here, John.
Pat, if you have your wish list for the master plan, where does the repositioning, fixing of the current dual-ended range / practice area work, and is that done before our next big event, whether it's Big Ten or one of the amateur events?
The question is, if I had my druthers, which one would I do first? If I had my druthers, I would do the master plan first, and then go to the short game, if that was up to me. What would I do with that?
Yeah, what are you gonna do about making it bigger? Because there's a master plan for that.
There is a master, so in 2018-19, the Greens Committee, under the guidance of Dan Falvey at the time, we developed a whole new range and an entire new West golf course. We have all the drawings, we have everything. It's ready to go if you're ready to strike the check. So that is the only way we see that we can expand that driving range, because we'd have to encroach into 9 and 18 of the West and the 7th hole. So it's a major 1 and 9. It's a major piece of work that would have to be done. We even priced it at the time when we did it. And back in 2018, it was like 16 million. I want to assure you now, it's in the 20s to do it. Anybody, anything else?
I think in the Lifestyle magazine, Kent, there's going to be some talk about the strategic plan and some of this stuff. You know, our priority as far as our facilities, so we're trying to walk and chew gum and juggle knives all at the same time. It's imperative for us to get our activities out of Roland Park. It's imperative. So that $16 or $20 million West Golf Course plan is wonderful, but we've got to get rackets out of there. We've got a lot of improvement that we're working on in that regard. So there's just only so much money to spend. And the board has prioritized the vacating of the activities at Roland Park as the most important priority relative to that particular project. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a really good question, but it's outside the scope of this meeting. So let me hold that. It's a complicated question, Pat, and I appreciate it. So let's hold that for another time. I think that we're already going here for quite a while, and I think this grassing question is a big question, and I think we want to go through the rationale behind it, the factors that we've considered, and we'll come back to that. You're going to hear plenty about that in time, okay?
Any other questions on the master plan? Okay. So let's talk about regrassing the East Golf Course. This discussion came up from a lot of the comments we heard about the lack of firm and fast fairways in the summer months on the East Golf Course. The committee, the Green Committee, began a due diligence process of looking into solutions that would mitigate this problem and change the playing surface for all members. It's important to keep in mind, and Elliot will tell you this, there is no perfect grass. There is no perfect solution for this, okay? So he will talk with that with Tim. And the Western Golf Association nor the USGA are telling us that we have to change the grass on the golf course. So we can now begin showing them what we have about grass. Elliot's here also to answer questions at the end of this. So here we go.
Okay. Everybody's going to be a grass expert when we're done today. Okay. Okay, so like Mr. Brady said, the Green recommended changing from creeping bent grass to cold hybrid Bermuda grass. And certainly, you know, LA can attest that the USGA, quite frankly, and on your seat, we have, you know, certainly information on drying out the game. And USGA, I think they're committed to spending, what, $30 million over the next 6 years, or 15 years, to develop grasses that require 50% less water, fertilizer, so on and so forth. Because you can see that it's the environment changing. It's hotter. We have water issues out west. We have a lot of restrictions on water. Certainly we live in a part of the country that, you know, if you're in Montgomery County, you're not supposed to put pesticides on your lawn. This is one of the reasons why we're looking at all these things. But I think the USGA certainly has invested heavily in certainly providing firmer and faster surfaces, but also paying for the research, the Oklahoma states, to develop a lot of these grasses that require less inputs for a better environment. And certainly playability is certainly a big part of it. Grass doesn't do any good if it's good for the environment, but it's crappy to play off of, right? It's got to play well, and then less water, less fertilizer, so on and so forth. So, Elliot, you want to just kind of address what the USGA is doing as far as from that, and then we'll keep moving forward?
Yeah, so it's 15-30-45 initiative. So over the next 15 years, we're committed to $30 million, which we're already trending to exceed that. We want to reduce golf or help reduce water consumption in golf by 45%, which is a lofty goal. And our CEO, Mike Wan, will tell you, he is a guy that he likes to just say things and then kind of come to us and say, can we do this? So he's spouted some big numbers off. But at the end of the day, we're committed to the number, the million number. The percentage is, if we get any percentage better, that's a win for the environment. It's a win for the game. And that's the goal. So the 45% is not irrelevant. It's what we're targeting. But the goal is, if there's anything that's going to affect golf the most, it's water consumption. And it's already happening out west. We don't talk about it as much in the east, in the northeast, because we get rain. I mean, I've been holding my breath that I was going to lose power. I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm here in Massachusetts again. You know, it's another inch of rain that fell. So the point though is Montgomery County. We talked about this a lot. Certainly locations in Massachusetts where I am now. Water is under scrutiny all the time. Anytime sprinklers are ran, especially at a golf course, because people want to come after golf is an easy target. So golf courses are looking at what can they do to decrease water use. And for a lot of courses now in New England who use city water, that's a major concern. But for you guys, you have an option that we don't have now in New England. You have Bermuda grass. We just don't have that option. As I'm helping golf courses now in New England who are underwater, literally, and it's 90 some degrees, our only option at this point is to see what happens and sod or seed back. We really can't change to a better grass that you have. So when you look at water use, as I think it was Mr. Carroll, Mr. Brady, I couldn't hear, one of you said, the firm and fast piece of this we'll get to, and that's a major component playability wise. But I'd say an equally big component, perhaps even bigger, depending on who you talk to, is that environmental piece. Can we be less reliant on water? Can we reduce our footprint? And how do we do that? And this is a big way to do that, because fairways are a big acreage. It's not putting greens, which you wouldn't do anyway with Bermuda grass at this point. But when you're talking 30 plus acres of fairway, put tee in with that, that's enough acreage to move the needle on not only water use, but fertilizer, pesticide use, plant protectants, which I'm sure Tim will mention. But I'll tip my cap and say the grass we're proposing uses less of all of that compared to what you use now. And I've heard it a couple times in the background or in comments of the East Course is a championship course. It truly is a championship course. It's truly a gym, which you all know, and I know. And so you're looking to protect that as much as you can. And in my opinion, this is that next kind of evolutionary step in how do we protect our golf course for the next however many years, 50 years. You know, we want to make sure that we are passing this course down to our children, grandchildren in the best possible condition and set up to kind of roll through some of these potential changes. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's coming down the pipeline for Montgomery County, but if I had to guess, it would be water restrictions and then fertilizer restrictions right on the heels of that. So that's where a lot of this conversation started. And then of course the playability component is big into that too.
Where's the line moving north, where, like you say, that grass isn't an option in Massachusetts, so where is sort of the line?
Yeah, so, all right. Mike, the question is, where is the line? And Elliot can answer that, but I'll just say too that, and we'll get to the presentation, but you have Bermuda grass on the Lincoln Financial Field. You have Bermuda grass on Soldier Field, because when they play on it. So, Elliot, in your observation, where is the line? I know that in Philadelphia you have warm season grasses in some of the courses, mainly driving ranges, this and that, but the question was, where is the line?
Yeah, I think you're in the line, you're inside the line. Philadelphia, some research that Tim, I think you're going to reference, was done in Lehigh Valley, so Northeast Pennsylvania. But when you look at where these grass started, these cold tolerant Bermuda grasses, the original, well, Patriot, but latitude 36. And if you look at a map and find that line, that cuts right through Philadelphia, was where this kind of exploded on the scene. And that was us, the USGA, going to Oklahoma State's the one that picked it up. but said, I think again, I couldn't hear, but I think it was Mr. Brady, but someone said there is no perfect grass, which is absolutely true. As long as you're going to grow grass in the mid-Atlantic, in the Baltimore area, there is no right grass for 12 months. If you tell me the few months you want to be really good, I can give you that grass, but it doesn't mean it's great for the other months because of the different weather we have. But we needed a grass that could get us through the summer months, because regardless of what grass you want or where you're situated, we do most of our business in May to end of September, right? So in that period of time, we need a grass that is the most reliable. And so that's where these cold tolerant Bermuda grasses started, latitude 36. And the breeding now on these has been less to do with heat tolerance, because it's a warm season grass. So it'll grow in Florida better than it will Baltimore, but it's a warm season grass. That's what you would find in Florida and the desert. The breeding efforts now have been making it more cold tolerant, shade tolerant to get through our winters. Because again, there's no guarantee in this, but the better technology we have Bermuda grass wise that gets through our winters, most of the winters, these grasses are going to continue to be a home run. I mean, there are people quickly. I used to be in the Mid-Atlantic for 10 years. Now I'm the director of the East region, and I've moved up to Massachusetts, covering more of New England, but I'm still working with you folks. There are courses up here who are asking about Bermuda grass, zoysia grass in select areas. I would not put it on a fairway here. We're just too cold in the winter, but that line is moving, and superintendents are willing to push that line because they see the benefits of what it could do to, pour tees, practice tees, something like that.
Okay. We'll move on to the presentation. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So why? Mr. Brady said golf experiences. We hear it, believe me. That, and I'm going to go why? Why are the fairways soft in the summer? This and that. But the result is we want to have, this year we had firm and fast fairways, didn't we? It didn't rain, perfect weather. I think the desire is that's what we want that year round, right in the summertime. So we hear you. Divots. Divots are an issue if you play today. Skid marks, safety is an issue, less inputs, and overall golf experience. So kind of how did we get here? Question would be, well, geez, we just shut down 10 years, 2014. Why didn't we do it at this time? I think what Elliot said is a lot of these Tahomas and some of the new cold tolerant varieties, they weren't available at the time. So we did the next bit. This is when we had ryegrass fairways. And let's say today, you get that big thunderstorm, you get wet, you get hot, you do everything you can, and all of a sudden that's what you're left with, and it's mud. So at the time, it was bentgrass. And we went to bentgrass because, number one, we just wanted to get through a summer with grass on the fairways. This is the West Course. And you can see where it got wet, it gets hot, you lose total control in the right, So we made the change at the time so that we could, bentgrass is the best under the wet conditions, so that we actually had grass year round on the fairways. You can see it paid off so that it gets wet. So there really wasn't a consideration to Bermuda at that time because we didn't think there wasn't some good varieties that they have today. Zoysia grass really wasn't an option because it's just, you have to solid sod it and this and that. So back in the days, and we're not gonna talk about the West Coast, but why we did what we did was just so you can have better conditions in the summertime. So little history here about in your grass. If you have cool season grasses, which are what the fescues, the bentgrass that we have, this and that, this hasn't changed over time, but basically what happens is you come out of spring, you got nice root growth, and it grows like crazy. Your home lawn grows, and then it gets hot, and what happens? And then the roots naturally slough off, all right? And then in the summertime, and this could depend. Like this year, we had that cold spring, so shoot, it was the end of June before it really got hot. So some of this growth, but you're still gonna get to that point now where soil temperatures rise, your roots shorten up in the summertime, and you're just kind of hanging on for dear life. And then you get those cool days in the fall, goes cool nice, you start regrowing roots, grass. Whereas the warm season grasses are exactly the opposite. You can see they're not growing in the spring. Once the soil temperatures get up, you get those 85 degrees days, this and that. Now this year, it didn't happen until the end of June. Probably But then they're absolutely at their best with shoot growth, which is the grass growth, and then the root growth. So two totally different dynamics. So when we talk about cool season versus warm season, it's really important you understand the dynamics here of, why, if we want our fairways to be at their best right here, this is where these cool season grasses are absolutely at their weakest. Now you can say, well, at 007, it's new. Well, it sure is. It's more heat tolerant and this and that, but it's still a cool season grass. It's susceptible to some of the stresses that we have. So it's important. So, if it goes out there and rains today, you can say, boy, Tim, you glad I got rain. We do not want rain today. It is hot. It is nasty. So probably the best thing I can explain to you, you got a sponge here. That's your soil. If you have a good soil, it's like 50% it's soil, and then there's those little holes there. It's 25% air and 25% water. When you get this, and this can happen, it's not uncommon. You can have a couple inches of rain, this and that all the time. But what can happen is today heat index is 100. Tonight's 75 degrees. It's just nasty out. And we talk about we got short roots, and all of a sudden you get this and you get a flood. Now all of a sudden that your soil profile, instead of having 25%, it's 100% waterlogged and soaked. And it's hot and it's nasty. And all of a sudden your roots need oxygen to survive. So all of a sudden you're going to lose your roots. You lose a lot of your roots. So if you had a half an inch or an inch, now all of a sudden you got nothing. So this is our worst nightmare: hot, wet, and it happens though. You can't. It seems like anymore you don't have just a little bit of rain. Either it pours, we have some nasty weather events. So this seems to happen about every year. But here's kind of where we are in the springtime. Really good roots. You're 4 or 5 inches deep. Like that curve, they shorten up as the soil temperature. Now you think, well, what about soil temperature? Well, we have our little gauges. You stick the thing in the turkey, stick this thing a couple inches down. But generally, when it's 65 degrees, that's when things are really humming good. Over 85 degrees, roots stop growing. You get 90 to 100 degrees, and that's when you lose roots. So right now we're about 85 degrees, which is pretty good. We don't want those storms, but if you get hot and wet and stuff like that, you really lose your roots. And then you're stuck in a situation like this where you got like a half an inch, you don't have any roots. So when water like this, that's when we enjoy conditions like this spring. The soil's moist, it's cool. While you do have to water, you certainly don't have the stress that you're under with. You have no roots. That's why you have to water, because you don't know roots, no grass. Okay, so whoops. So here we are. Yeah. So here's just this is a couple. So heat index 112 degrees. We have these little soil thermometers that these moisture meters, and but you can see it's hard to read, but that's over 90 degrees. So what you don't want to be hot and wet, and then you can see it's just hot. And this was 2020. In July, we had 25 days of some 30-some days over 90. So this year's been pretty good, though. I know we're going to have a little stretch here where it's going to be over 90s, maybe upper 90s for 2 or 3 days. And next week, we're looking at lows in the mid-60s. You get some relief at night in the 80s. So, but I hate to say this is a secret, but it really is all about the weather, what we do. It really is. So how a golf course looks and play. If some years, if it's like this, can you imagine, being in Phoenix where it's 110 degrees for 30 days in a row? You can imagine here where you're really one thunderstorm away from really ruining your season because of things out of your control. So the weather and luck just play a lot of what we do and stuff like that, and how the golf course plays. So after a good old-fashioned rain, the question is, why are we watering after rain? And certainly we don't want to. We don't want to put down any more water than we have to, but in a situation like the other day, we had a little bit of rain, but the next thing we might have to, if you drive by and think, oh gosh, it just rained the other day, and they're running sprinklers. Well, that sprinkler only might run for 3 minutes. We might have had to water in a fertilizer or whatever it is, or you might have had to syringe something. But so anyways, we hear that, we get it. I mean, sometimes, it's just like, geez, we got to put this material out. It needs a little bit of water in. It just rained 2 days ago, and the perception doesn't look good, or it's, hey, I just played the other day and it's soft. Why is he watering? Well, anyways, you spin that head, it's not even like 0.03 inches of rain, but believe me, we don't want to water any more than we have to as well. So the question is, why Bermuda grass? I think that there's a lot of case studies out there, and we're not just diving into this. I think that we've had some experience in 2021. We'll talk about some tees, and really, in 20 years ago, we've been having this 2-grass system on the driving range tees. Some years in Bermuda, some years in some of this and that. So, but really on 20, this was after the Maryland Open. You can see 17 is a tough environment, shade, no air movement, just stinking hot. And this was you can see all the divots on the tee. And the black is like, that's not grass, that's like dead, okay? So you get rain and you get algae. And then, so we sod it in 2021 with a cold tolerant variety called Iron Cutter. And it's done really, really well. And we just wanted to see what it looked like in shade, cool, and all that kind of stuff. So it's done really well there. Haven't seen any winter injury. Recovers really well from divots. So that's one of our case studies. And then over a period of years, starting in 2019, we started regrassing. We didn't rebuild the West Course tee, but in tees, Mr. So you talk about mounds, right? The West Course tees are really, really bad, like 9. So I think over a 3-year period, 19, 20, and then last year, we stripped. We tried to make them a little bigger where we could. But we certainly have a size problem on the West. And then we just regrassed. Now, underneath there, they may be mixed, not mixed, drainage. There was only the 2 tees that we redid. Number 1, which is bigger, that's a nice level tee, and number 12. So you can see that, in the middle of summer, when the grass is at its weakest, you can see there's no divot recovery, and everybody has to play here because it was so, but you can see widen the tee. Certainly recovery's a lot better. This is number 13. So we've heard some comments. This year was a tough year coming out of spring with the Bermuda because it was cool, but I think that we're certainly making progress. This was 13. That was just done last year. Grass seed isn't going to grow this time of year, and divots and all that kind of stuff. It's 90 degrees. You're not going to get, and I think there's a period of time where on the cool season grasses, you'll see some divot recovery in the spring, a little bit in the fall. But in the heat of summer, it's like this. That grass isn't going to recover. It's just not growing. The cool season grasses are really shutting down. You saw the graph. The roots aren't growing. Top growth isn't growing. You're not going to see a lot of lateral movement. So the only really area that, in the heat of the summer is the warm season grasses, which are actually thriving in the heat and everything. Here's number 2. And I think when you talk about proportionate wise too, this is where most of the play is, but yet it's one of the smallest tees on that thing. So I think the tee in front of it, this was an Iron Cutter. The one in front of it's Tahoma, but I think the comments were, geez, the tees have turned out terrible. I would say that some of them we certainly can improve upon, but I think it's certainly a lot better than what we've had in the past, just by regrassing. And then number 8. So, and I think the point of this too is that this was Tahoma number 8, the big tees. This was a year after, so you can see still a little bit thin. We overseeded, but sometimes things just take a little bit of time to mature. And you can see 4 years later, this tee's holding up really well. And sometimes patience is hard to come by anymore. And also the same thing with patience when we regrass the fairways on the West. This was 1 year after we seeded. Now it's not, sometimes it just takes time, whether maybe it's growing environment, shade, this, that, and whatever. But for example, we visited some golf courses that just regrassed like last summer, not even a year old. And people were critical of them, which is fine, but sometimes it does take a little bit of time to get the results that you're looking for. And also we're learning too, this was 16. Certainly there's some bad areas. I think the one thing, remember this when we had no snow, we played off of these small little tees, and you can see that in some of our tees, we have 2 or 3 markers on one tee. And we literally just wore it to death. No grass is really growing in the wintertime. So when it gets warm, we just resod it. Believe it or not, that, get the hot weather and the Bermuda grass roots real good, and certainly got to do a little bit more sod in there. And then 16 as well. That, I think we have a shade issue over here, but anyways, so we're learning. We can do better. The goal is to do better. But you certainly get recovery, and if you put down bent grass, say you want 14 approach, and we'll get to the fairway divots here pretty soon, but if you try to go out now and resod some of these areas with bent grass, you really wouldn't get very good results. Versus this stuff, you lay the Bermuda grass down, it'd be 100 degrees, the roots, and you're playing off it in 3 or 4 days. So some of the pros of the Bermuda grass. Certainly requires less, it's more heat tolerant, more drought tolerant, requires less water. So this was the men's invitational last year. It was in September, and I think we had, beginning of the week, we got a lot of rain. Then we said, by golly, we're not gonna water the rest of this week. Want that thing to be dry and fast. So you can see the combination of cart traffic and not watering. Because I think some of the comments that I get, or even Mr. Brady gets, is let's get firm, let's just not water the grass. All right, just don't water it. I don't know, is that acceptable to everybody? If you just don't water the grass? this grass still needs water to survive. So that's kind of what, you know, we kind of let it go, traffic, this and that. So to me, that's really not a viable solution for providing really good conditions and stuff. Last Sunday, the question is, you do have to water this grass. So last week ago Friday, we got 1.25 inches of rain. 2 days, they can kind of see it starting to brown out a little bit because the roots are short, it's starting to go under moisture stress. Thank you, Mark, for this picture. And 2 days later, and if you don't syringe it, lightly water that, you're gonna have some scarring, you're gonna have some severe damage. So you do have to water this bent grass. So you know, water, even after 2 days after that. I would say like the Bermuda grass that we have, sometimes we don't have to water that for a week. You have another rainstorm, you know, so another week. So like T on 17, we don't even have the irrigation running on that T. So also you enter cart traffic. You see the cart tracks. If we're trying to be as dry and as firm as possible, and then you take a cart across it, you can see it's going under stress. So one of the things you have to do is you have to lightly water. So in estimations, the estimation is that if turf under traffic, you got to apply 30 to 40% more water on, because you have compaction, like in some of these areas, these pinch points, you've seen them all 7, 2. So just the fact that we have a lot of area in cart traffic, you do have to apply more water, and that certainly makes it softer. But you can see the cart tracks in this. Visage, regardless of how you feel about visage, this gives us to a track where all this is just, you know, you can all see how many people are playing here every day. You get 150, 180, whatever, and people taking carts. So you can see this is just a normal day. There's a lot of cart traffic driving all over the place. Certainly the Bermuda, it's more traffic tolerant. In fact, a lot of the courses that we visited encouraged their members to drive, you know, because the roughs are under stress, it's a cool season grass. They're saying drive your cart in the fairway in the summertime because it can handle the traffic and this and that. I'd like to have Pat actually address the issue with carts too, as far as the next one, regarding what the committee's recommendation on carts is.
So we are a country club and we have a diverse membership, and it's our recommendation that we not restrict carts in any fashion on the golf course due to the mix of the membership. We don't want to tell one group that they can't be on the golf course versus another group at any one time. Carts are a part of the club now. We have a lot of members who can't walk the East Golf Course, you know, because of its length and its topography. So carts are going to be part of this grass is perfect for. This grass takes the beating and keeps on ticking. It's a great surface.
Okay. Certainly there'll be, you know, if you get a few inches of rain, this and that, if it's soft, but again, the restrictions, and some of the people we've talked to too, because they just don't water that much. When you get 1 inch or 2 of rain, it takes the water that much better. It's not that. We were at Navy last week and they got 1 inch of rain, and that morning we were driving carts right down the middle of the fairway. And it was even a little bit wet, but it was able to tolerate that. So I'm going to turn this over to Kent to talk a little bit about the
So I asked Carrington, who's our data analyst, to put some information together just to help quantify out of all of the rounds that we do in a given year, how that breaks down between how many walkers, how many carts do we take. And basically what this tells you is that 50% of your rounds, whether we like it or not, are driven by carts. And so that's really, so you're going back starting in 2019 all the way through current year. So not even withstanding the revenue component of it, especially when you get to this time of year, more people are starting to ride than they are walk. Plus, as Mr. Brady mentioned, we need to make sure that we're accessible to all avenues and demographics of our members too. So if we were to restrict carts in that respect, then we would be alienating that part of our membership as well. So again, and you know, if you look at the revenue component, which is just a byproduct of that, I mean, that's almost $500,000 in revenue that you would end up having to pay for if we eliminated carts or even restricted carts. I think even if you reduced it down to where we could net that out at about $300,000, that's still going to cost each active golfer about $300 a year more, because that money is going to drop straight to the dues line.
All right, thank you. All right, divots, you know, this is a 14 approach right now. So you're not going to get any recovery from bent grass. It's just not going to recover this time of year. tees, tees are small, but again, no recovery. Versus our best example is right out the door over there at the driving range. Even though the tees are small, they're the new hybrid cold tolerant Bermuda grass. You can see you can see the use, and then you can almost see over here. This is probably from a week later and stuff like that. So it works. And the whole goal is you want grass to recover faster and you can tear it up. So you're going to get divot recovery where you've never had it before in the summertime. All those areas that you have issues with divots, that all disappears. And I think some of the work the USGA's done, Lehigh Country Club, USGA study, you can see from Allentown, but on the left, divot recovery, you got 39 days and the divot bentgrass still isn't recovered, whereas 18 days. So in our part of the woods, you're in 7 to 10 days, especially when the weather's like this. So all the areas we have divot issues, all that disappears where the grass is actually going to recover and grow and thrive this time of year. So I went to Columbia Country Club. If you haven't been down there before, we went to the second hole. I think Mr. O'Neill might have been there. But he said to Matt, take us me to your worst spot, worst collection. This is their worst spot right here. You can see there are some divots, but this is their absolute worst spot. Went to Naval Academy last week. I said, Eric, take me to your worst possible spot. And also like shout out to Eric David. Eric was here for a number of years. He's at Navy now, but he's been a great asset for us too. But that's his worst spot on the whole golf course. And they're doing, 30,000 rounds a year, this and that. It's a collection area. So you're just getting divot recovery so much faster. This is tough to see, but you saw that where the roots shrink up. People driving cars, they hit on the brake, they do, all that crazy stuff that you've seen them in the summertime because that grass is so weak and tender because of no roots. That all disappears because you have grass that actually has roots that can, it's not going to happen on the Bermuda grass because it's actually growing and you need a structure to it. Safety. This time of year, you're going to see localized dry. So we're trying to keep this as dry as we can. And rather than running sprinklers that hit a big area, we're just trying to hit spots. Well, that all disappears as well. There's really you still might have to water spots in the morning, but there's no syringing. If you don't hit these spots in the day, you could lose some grass. So it certainly affects your golf experience. Safety-wise, our staff are out of the way. So as a rule of thumb, there's not going to be any more people out in the fairway watering because it certainly doesn't need the water. Right. You see all this ryegrass coming back. They think this is, generally what it is that ryegrass can live like the seed that we put down from divots and all that kind of stuff. It can remain viable like 20 years in the soil. So it keeps popping through. This is some experiments, but there's no labeled material that you can take the ryegrass out of bentgrass. So that's really not an option for us, but there's lots and lots of options as far as taking ryegrass out of Bermuda grass. So all that clumpiness and all that all disappears. Aerification, right now we aerify in December when it's closed, and last year was muddy and nasty, and the holes were still there back in the spring. So what we would do is we are closed for the next few Mondays. So you aerify on a Monday, but basically it would recover in 4 to 5 days in a week. So do it on Monday when we're closed. Recovery time's a lot faster versus what we're doing the bentgrass. It takes a lot, recovery time's longer, and then also we're dealing with weather delays, frost, this and that, when we're doing it out in December. Question was, so our grass, we made a grassing decision because remember when number 2, the ball would roll down here and the divots were so darn bad. So we put rough in front of the green, which negatively affected the Tillinghast intent. So the goal would be to put that back and do it in Bermuda grass. And then when the balls do funnel down, certainly the grass will recover from the divots versus now, if we did that, the bent grass just doesn't recover. So the goal will be with the master plan, put that back and then regrass it, and then you actually have a grass that will recover from it. Cons of Bermuda grass, one of the things we did the range and we spent the $300,000, but I would look back on it and certainly wish we gave Bermuda grass too much credit, think, oh, it's wet, it'll do fine. No grass is going to do well when it's sitting underwater like that. So we learned the hard way that, we're going to have to go back there and do drainage. That's certainly a detriment. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to continue to do drainage on the East course. Even though it drains better, so on and so forth, there's still a lot left to be done. But certainly the photo that, we need to do better in this, that we should have done it the first time, but we didn't. But there's no grasses that thrive under saturated soil like that. So. Traffic, is certainly a concern on, heavy compacted soil. This is the driving range, and this is 2022, and this is where a barber pole is, so we drive around that. And you can see the effect it has. But certainly that's a concern, but with the East Course normally closes in November, you're not gonna have any traffic on it in those months versus last year, and we'll talk about the range here in a little bit there. So as far as when the East closes and when you have, it kind of mitigates, we're not as concerned about that versus what's been happening on the driving range. And winter injury. Elliot, you wanna talk a little bit about this real quick?
Yeah, the winter injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Winter injury, this and that, whole hardy type.
the winter injury is the question mark with Bermuda, and even these cold tolerant Bermudas, they are bred where they're going to survive most of your winters. I would feel comfortable saying 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, but we're going to get a bad winter that's going to hurt Bermuda grass. But what I've seen, because I've been through 14 was a really bad one, and we lost some Bermuda grass. The likelihood of losing 30, 35 acres, Tim, whatever you said your new fairways will be, is small. What we're talking about really was that photo you just showed of a wet area and a little discoloration on the side. That's what you'll lose on fairways. It'll be low-lying pockets that held water, that really held ice for too long. And then that will be where you need to recover next year. We're just not going to experience a winter hard enough to lose all of your fairways. And then a question, I've been following the Q&A on my side, so I'm going to answer one because it kind of goes in line with this. An anonymous person asked about, what if we have a cold April again, which it seems like the trend in the climate has been cooler April, really cooler, probably even May than normal, but longer seasons, certainly warmer in August, September, and even to October. The way I still look at these Bermuda grasses, and when I pitch these to a golf course, and when I help them think through what this is going to look like, is when you track your rounds and see that most of your golf is played, Memorial Day to Labor Day, call it, but certainly that June through August timeframe. Getting back to Tim's growth chart, I look at this grass as how can we be the strongest when we're busiest, when we're making our most money. So yes, we're going to have a cool April, and the Bermuda grass may not be as good as you think it should be. Doesn't mean it's going to happen every April, but it's going to happen. There's no way that it's not going to happen. But it's still a warm season grass. So when the weather eventually gets there, that's when you are going to be at your peak. So Bermuda grass, warm season grass, there's nothing you can do for that. It is a warm season grass, no matter how cold tolerant it is. So there's always going to be some winter injury concern. There's less now than there was 5 years ago. The breeding trend, there will be less perhaps in the next 5 years. I don't know the answer to that, but I still think it's going to be pocketed. I have not seen widespread death of any surface, practice tee, par 3 tees, or fairways that I work with. I've not worked with a golf course who's lost all 30 acres. It's been an acre or two spread out over 18 holes, which is kind of this localized damage.
Thank you, Elliot. All right. So the best thing is snow. It's a nice insulator, but last year, we got no snow. So, all right. Also, we talk about a lot of these improved varieties have better shade tolerance versus some of the older varieties. When does it turn green in the spring? This is 2022. You can see it starts to go on a little bit of May. Tracking it at the Naval Academy, that's March. You can see on the right, April. Middle of April. And then you can see May, June, it's full. And then when do we turn brown for the winter? Now this isn't brown, this is actually him just drying down the fairways. So they're just drying far. And sometimes he'll wait till they turn black, they get so dry. And then you can see in October. And I do agree with Elliot. I think that the trend is you're cooler in the spring, but you're seeing September used to be like August, October like September. And then you can see middle of November, you still got really good color. And then when you get a really hard freeze, it gets you in the middle of December. Columbia, last year, the first week of December. And then last year, our driving range, we had good color middle of November, got a hard freeze in December, and you can see it went off color pretty fast. So you really had good color in the fall. Options for colorants, there are certainly people out there that paint, you know. It's an option. I'm not saying we do it, but it's paint. Overseeding, personally, I think that one of the things you can do is, you can see it's so cold that the overseed, this was covered in the wintertime. The overseed really not doing anything. You play in the middle of winter, it's still brown. And one of the disadvantages of overseeding in the springtime, the ryegrass grows, it shades out the Bermuda, so it's detrimental. So a lot of things that we want to do is, actually, if you overseed, you want to kill the seed in the springtime, so you really don't get the benefit of it. And you can see what we have there today. So, and then all the play in the wintertime, see all the divots and stuff like that. But springtime, it grows out of it. And then you got a bentgrass tree and a Bermuda grass tree. They're both dormant. Everything's brown, right? So I focus more on playability and not so much about color, because like I said, everything's brown and dormant in the wintertime. Some of these Bermuda grasses, this is called common Bermuda. This is the nasty stuff. And I think that no one would ever be a proponent of putting that out there. Grows all over the place, but that's 1940s technology for Bermuda grass. And then you'll see, I was in down DC last, a lot of places just spray Roundup on that multiple times to try to kill it and then regrass. Questions are, well, and then we have a frequently asked questions section there, but are we gonna have Bermuda grass all in the rough? We've talked a lot about breeding. These things are really bred for density, not so much creeping. So in 2 or 3 years, this really hasn't moved at all. In fact, at the Naval Academy, they got their Bermuda grass going right up to the front of the green. They just don't do that. So lateral creeping sacrifice in the breeding process. So driving range, kind of before and after. So operationally, we have pits out there. It's a mess. So we resawed in 2021. So what happened this winter in the range? It looks terrible. But one of the mistakes we made was we had no snow and people hit a lot of golf balls throughout the winter. Traffic on dormant turf is a big reason why we have the damage that we have. You can see we're driving through West, and this is not pointing fingers at the golf shop or anything, but we want to pick up balls, we want to be efficient, we want to be effective, but we really shouldn't have been driving the picker and picking balls all winter on this dormant turf because it, so we got what we got. It's wet. Soils are heavy. Worst case, everything's on the, no drainage. So what we saw is, you can see the ball picker, he's not driving over this pole. So traffic on dormancy does have a negative effect on it. We see that. Not only that, December, we had no drainage out there. We got really hard snap or freeze. You can see the low-lying area that Elliot's talking about. Monday, we're going to start fixing this. So communication is going to come out this weekend. You can see, even cover, we had turf cover on the tees. We didn't have any damage. You see the line right there, but even where we're soaked underneath there, it still killed it. So we're going to come in and this end will close, the other end will be open. We're going to put up a screen there, restrict it to about 200 yards. Going to go in here and do drainage, and then when the drainage is done, we're going to kind of rototill it and then sod it back, and then we're done with this end. We're going to do the other end to try to make, certainly not drainage and everything, but try to get as much of that range done as possible and try to do it, right after the fact. So, and my final slide, the point is that when do you really want to be at its best? And you see our rounds. 20-year average from 99 to 2019. COVID years, we were busy, and obviously, and then in this year, kind of year to date. So a lot of golf, a lot of rounds. So I think that's kind of what we're targeting is there is no perfect grass, but when do we really want to be at our best? So, and it certainly coincides with, when the Bermuda grass is at its best. So, all right. Thank you for your attention. And any questions? We got a lot of stuff. I appreciate you hanging in there. That's a lot of information.
this time of year. This time of year is tough in Scotland. We disagree with that. It's tough to go from rain to hundreds of degrees. It's also something that we think about some of the conversations that have foreseen the future. That trend's here to stay. And probably as more of the kind of more southern like places, we might see reductions in some of that because it's 105 degrees. But May and June, the grass has been fantastic. Certainly nothing short of spectacular with grass as well. Certainly in September and October as well. You keep using the phrase this time of year, and we know that this grass is not necessarily designed for times where the soil temperatures are below 60, which is much of March, April, parts of the day, certainly then October as well. So when we're thinking about some of the kind of future signs in that sense, do we anticipate that dynamic being something that is a concern for those times of year, especially knowing that some of the other areas that we referenced in the sports parks are losing financial for making traffic fully. They got turf land scheduled until June, and then they start to turf in September. We're certainly not going to be able to do that across 35 acres.
Right. So the question is, you know, the environment for Bermuda grass. I think one thing we're really blessed in the East Coast is we do have ample, you know, shade's not an issue for most of our, for on our fairways and stuff. Soil's good, shade's, you know, less. So I think we got really good growing environments. Certainly the golf course drains really well. There's certainly room for improvement. So I've just been here 21. The worst case scenario for us is you get that thunderstorm, you get wet, and all of a sudden everything's really good right now. And then you come out in 3 days, you get 3 inches of rain, this and that, and all of a sudden you have no roots, you're getting wet wilt, and all of a sudden the plant collapses, it's weak, and the conditions can change just overnight. So I think to try to get ahead of it is just to go with this. No, if it didn't happen, but it has happened, and it does happen, where it's just so wet out there and stuff like that. And you're, you know, it just rained 2 inches the other day, and you got wilt, and you got stuff under moisture stress, and you're watering it. And it's not going to recover until the temperatures, you get those, you know, till September or whenever that's due. So we're just trying to get ahead of the worst case scenarios, which we see, which do happen. We're having a really good this year so far, but we're just trying to look ahead and stuff like that.
Tim, if I can address Mr. Bojanowski too, we're only as good as our last cheeseburger. Okay, and I mean that because I can give you, you know, 6 cheeseburgers in a row that are cooked exactly the way you want, but that very next cheeseburger is off a little bit, and you're going to complain to me that we didn't do it the right way. You might not ever complain, but you understand my point. This is a feedback-rich environment we're dealing with. But in that same instance, it's short-term memory, right? We will get all the best compliments in the world about Tim's team, May, June, September, October, but how quickly that turns on us in July and August. Right.
No, you didn't lose that. No, we've never lost that much.
Are we not just trading off the risk of a thunderstorm from 95-degree weather and wilt under the risk that in the winter we actually get a cold winter and then we lose part of the fairway that way?
Yeah, it's the trade-off. And again, this goes back to the surveys of we're sick and tired of playing on wet fairways. We're sick and tired.
Then I go back to your range, how important is the drainage to, in your opinion, like this level of stuff shows, drainage, I'm unfortunate, like I said, but when you get there, it's been night and day difference. What would the drainage, improvement drainage that we've seen from 1 to 2, 7 to 10? It's incredible.
Right.
What would that do for the across the golf course? Would you want to go 7, 10? Or you still want?
I think certainly the drainage would help the fairways, but it doesn't help divots recover faster. It doesn't help skid marks in the fairway because you're still going to get those short roots in the summertime. You're still going to have divot issues. You're still going to have cart issues. that sort of thing, but will it, you know.
You hear it's water parks, right? So I mean, water parks, your parks a lot is stress on the golf course.
Correct.
Championship golf, so like, that's. It's a revenue thing.
Sure.
It's,
It's a demographic thing as well.
it's,
Can you restrict them in some way? You could restrict them to the rough and then we're gonna have a problem.
No, just like the time. I mean, can you diminish this?
but
Or
you,
could you say like, hey, only for, well, why not then?
what about our members, our older members that like to play early in the mornings?
And I think that you could probably do something where you say, hey, 4 days a week, you can play early, 3 days a week, you can play later.
I can tell you.
Let me handle this one because I think I've heard this a lot, and I thought about adding comments in my opening message about cart utilization and restrictions on the East Golf Course and making it walking only at certain times of the week or the day, et cetera. And Mike, this is a big question at the Baltimore Country Club and one that prior boards have dealt with. And the decision has been that those 5 or 6 generations of golfers that we have playing on the golf course, that they should have available to them equal access through the golf cart traffic. Yes, it is budgetary, but it's really more about a playability issue for all of our members. And it's a very difficult decision. And in spite of, personal preferences, et cetera, one of the things that I've been saying and want to say here is that there are things that this club needs to address and things that need to get done here at the Baltimore Country Club. The last thing that we need as a club is to open up a civil war. And I think the grassing, we're here to assess what that might look like, but we're not here to divide the membership over any particular issue. And I definitely believe that if we open up a discussion on what to do about carts and start to restrict it, that's going to create divisions in a club that right now is probably as unified as it's been in years, thanks to some of the things we've done. It's tough, Mike, but I'm going to tell you that it's really not open for discussion. That's not been discussed or considered at this point in time. Brett, I hope so. Well, yeah, I understand that. I understand that. That again is similar to the question of the funding issue, and deferred maintenance is a major topic that we're discussing at the board level. And it isn't just related to the golf course. I mean, the construction project here, when we peeled back the walls, I think there was about a $3.5 million add-on to the construction to redo the HVAC system in this building to include the kitchen, which was never air conditioned. And so these problems don't go away. In fact, not spending on deferred maintenance is almost as if the club is taking out a loan, because eventually you deal with these problems, Brett. And this is a really big question, and I'll tell you that the board, and you'll hear more about this soon, but the board is paying particular attention to the long-term maintenance of what we own. And it'll include this if the funding falls through. Yes. The question was, does the funding source get resolved before we make a decision on this master plan? It absolutely does, Mike. I got a question back here, and then I'll come back to you.
You guys are, I think you said not going to talk about financing tonight.
Correct.
Do you have a number on the cost? Are you prepared to talk about that? Have you mentioned it?
I thought as far as this project? Drew, this project here? So the 4.5 million, which doesn't include, by the way, all of the drainage costs, which continue to be ongoing. So it's a big number. The grass is minimal, Kent.
The grass is not the big issue. To spring it in is not very expensive.
Okay.
My question, and we've talked a lot about the recovery of the Bermuda. I don't believe that I've played on smooth Bermuda Strand. I'd be curious about other people that have played it. I'd be curious about the member, not just the superintendent at Columbia Navy, but the members and that are players and anybody in this room that has played it. Does it play like regular Bermuda, but it just recovers better? Because
find the surface to be a great surface. If you stand on it and look at it, it doesn't look any different than a bent grass to me. I can't tell the difference standing on it. So it's a great surface. Tom was down at Navy one day. I took him down. He ran into a couple of members. They raved about it. I saw a member from Columbia the other day at another club. I said to him, hey, just by the way, how do you like your new fairways? Love them. Love them. Who? Evan, go.
One question I did have, you keep talking about sprigging. My host on Tuesday said that they sought.
They did sod.
Can you talk about the difference in cost and or time for it to grow?
The difference in time, the question is, should you sod or sprig? The difference, the time difference we have found out is really negligible, whether you sod or sprig, okay? The cost difference is tremendous. So Columbia sodded for in excess of $1 million. You can sprig for a third of that.
And you may verify this, but my understanding is that Columbia pays for their water. So they chose the more expensive option to sod their golf course, and they could eliminate the purchase of water. So I think for them, it was the economically most viable reason. Brian, you had a question?
Did you look at Chartwell when you were in Navy?
No, Chartwell is Zoysia.
Why did they go with Zoysia over the Bermuda?
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Someone should walk Chartwell's fairways. They are the best fairways anywhere. I was just doing them. So I think that answer we have to figure out why.
I don't know the answer yet.
But can we find out? Can your committee find out?
Sure.
Thank you.
Columbia Tuesday, Navy yesterday. Yeah, Mike can say that. I mean, it definitely creepy. Is that a technique issue or is that a budget? Like Columbia was better. Between the three, playing your last Thursday, ECC was by far the best condition of the three fairways, in my opinion. So
Thank you.
I don't know how that, tough here, you guys know that, but I feel that there was definite creepage at Navy. It's undisputable.
Yeah, well, before they did that, they pretty much had Bermuda all over that property there, so I'm not sure how much.
Does the soil composition have anything to do with, so Navy yesterday was very, very firm. The greens were firm, but it's also right next to the water, so I would assume it's maybe a little bit sandier. And, I don't know of any golf course in Worcester where we are that the quality of course that this club is, that has put this in yet. So kind of feel like a little bit of a first adopter. Like, is there anything to do with the soil composition? Like, we're on rolling hills. Does Bermuda act differently? I mean, I feel like in Florida, it's much sandier. The further south you go, it feels like it's sandier.
Yeah.
Is that a factor or a concern?
Oh, no, I don't think for us is, the question is whether soil, this, that, what Bermuda grows in, better in and stuff like that. So, I mean, we got really good soil here, so that's really not, it'll grow anyway. And the question too is, if you've been to our complex, we have a big area, it's called the soccer field. So I don't know, about 10 years ago, it was gravel, so we sodded Bermuda across it. And so we have a really good field where guys at lunchtime can play soccer because it grows on gravel. So it's kind of it'll grow in anything, And I think if you go to Navy, if you go to a football game, that one parking lot on the gravel, I think they sprigged it with Bermuda grass. So they got, so the stuff will grow in just about anything. So.
Two things. One, I want to say, I played Chartwell a bunch of times.
Right.
There's no divots anywhere. But also, did you consider just taking one hole, if Bermuda's the one we're gonna try, and just taking number 18 and this year, and then whatever resodding it, experimenting, see how it goes through winter, see how it goes through spring, before you go and change the whole course.
So the question is, do we look at taking a hole out of play and doing a hole, this and that, and all that kind of stuff? And I think just for playability reasons, I think because we have it on the tees, we have it this and that. We didn't. I don't think it was ever considered by the committee. And,
You see how the parts would wear it, you see how the spring would happen.
right. And I know Zoysia too. I came from before I was at a club in Georgia for 8 years. I had Zoysia, you couldn't, you got a solid sod zoysia. I know like Chartwell did this and this and that. So it's certainly playability is great. Winter, a lot of the winter damage you don't see with that, but economically, I think we looked at it, but that's probably, but that certainly could be something the committee could consider as well. Yes, sir. I think with the, like I said, the growing, number one, you don't have great drainage on the west fairways. So I think that, a lot of those pockets. Number two, you have a lot more shade, you got trees on both sides. So I don't think that the west course would be an ideal growing environment for the Bermuda grass, just because for that reason. It's so much better on the east course. Yes, sir.
Jim, so,
Yes, sir.
these courses we're talking about, this is recent.
Correct.
They have not
Last few years.
experienced severe winter. They, I understand where you're coming from, but I would contend that the 007 that we put down, that was part of it, was a roaring success. You're getting the pushback because when you guys did the West, you actually, with that grass, you changed the experience and you attracted a lot more people. So I think what everyone's saying is like, man, be careful with this because, if I don't know if you can go, once you plant that, I'm not sure you can go back to that, can you?
It's just an observation. President calls it our greatest asset. So there's several reasons why this is our greatest asset. It's a fabulous piece of property. You got to give the board 100 years ago to full credit for that. The other reason is it's a Tilley design, which is a fantastic national accepted design, and we all love it. And then the third reason is Tim Kennelly's magic maintenance. I mean, there's no better out there for it, and we're so fortunate to have that. That's for sure. And then there's the other component is the fact that the beauty of the East Course. Our entire clubhouse looks out on the East Course, and it's our ocean view. There's no question about it. And it would be really difficult to give that up. It's a fabulous green view, and you got to consider what happens when that turns brown. And it's a big part of this club. It's a big part of the culture and the tradition of this club. And I hope we can keep that. We're not going to lose the architectural integrity by making any of these changes. And as Tim said, there's no perfect grass and there's no perfect solution for this. But I venture to say that the beauty and the tradition and the culture of this East Course is something to consider in your final decision. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Grosh.
About what we all experience when we get big heavy rain on the, what happens to the ryegrass. What happens to the Bermuda grass when we get big heavy downpour all across winter?
Well, one of the things that I've seen, is that you don't have the disease, you don't have any of that sort of stuff. And because you're really not watering that much anyways, it takes that water that much better. All I can say, we were down at Navy the other day, they got an inch of rain that morning, and we were driving carts on it the same day. So if you got 5 inches of rain, is it gonna be wet? Sure, it's gonna be wet. But you're gonna spray probably growth regulators on it, so it doesn't get long and stuff like that. But it's certainly gonna be a lot more favorable than what we see now. You're not gonna see, drive cars through it, traffic, all that kind of stuff. In fact, it's gonna probably grow out of control when it's hot like this and stuff like that. So now, if it doesn't have drainage and the water's gonna sit there for 3 days, that's not good. But I don't think that we're gonna see that as well. So, yes, sir.
I played Navy a good amount over the last couple of years. Do you
Right.
know if they resodded or sprayed?
Spray.
They sprayed?
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that if you resod the growth back a lot quicker than if you sprayed, it's gonna take a couple of years, because that's kind of what I saw at Navy over the last few years. It's really, really good right now. I played it a few times this year.
Right.
It's fantastic. I love the fairways. A little bit of creep, but it did take a
No, I agree with it. Just like the slide, the question is, it took a couple years at Navy to get there. And just like my picture, it does take time for maturity and stuff like that, even when we, so there's no question about that. Mr. Fields.
First off, Tim, I want to echo what you said about you and the committee, all the work we've done. It's incredible. I mean, to enhance this East Coast is our gem, and we need to do that. If the decision's been made to keep the East Coast cart friendly, this grass is incredible. We went down at the summer. Couple observations. One is, I haven't seen, maybe our USDA person has seen, there are no championship golf courses that have this grass north of, I would call, Virginia. I don't consider Columbia a championship golf course on the East Coast. I don't see the courses north here that have that grass yet. Hayes Valley has the opportunity now to put new grass. And they decided to put bent grass, is that correct? 007 plus. Yeah. And so it continues to get back to cards, I think, Hayes probably made a decision to move bent. Like decision as well. So, if that's the decision in the East Coast, then we have to look at this option. But I haven't seen a championship golf course north of the Mason-Dixon line, certainly.
Elliot, the question was, is it a championship grass and is it north of the Mason-Dixon line? Or here, there, or wherever?
More specifically, give us any other golf course of country club of significance that has done this. Just give us 10 clubs that have done this. Congressional has done it, or Marion is thinking about it, or anybody to have us feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think, well, look, I know Burning Tree, they have iron cutter on their range. You're gonna see a lot of it on range tees and stuff like that, but as far as, not on fairways, not that I've seen, the championship. Now, I would say championship grass, I would say that it's not north of, like Elliot did say, it's too cold in Massachusetts. They're not gonna do so you're not gonna see that. But championship grass per se, LA Country Club hosted the US Open this year, Bermuda grass. Pinehurst next year, US Open, Bermuda grass, so geographically, I don't, look, you're not gonna put it in Canada, but geographically, I don't think they're gonna push the warm season grasses aren't gonna thrive up in the Great White North because it's just not gonna survive the winters, but, and there are a lot of great golf courses up there too, so for sure.
I think we all have to take into consideration, you asked about what other great courses have done this. Most of the courses you're thinking about, strict carts. So is that a fair comparison if we decided we're not going to restrict? It's unfortunate for walking, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Elliot, you there?
I'm here. I can't hear the question though.
Question about championship grass, Bermuda grass, north of or what great golf courses have Bermuda fairways, like the Iron Cutter or Tahoma or whatever, and Middle Atlantic or just Virginia or our area that we can compare with so they feel more comfortable with the decision?
Well, I mean, there's a growing number in your area of warm season grasses, which is still a trend. I mean, whether you pick Zoysia or Bermuda, it's warm season versus what would be the norm is either bent or ryegrass historically. I did hear the north of the Mason-Dixon. And when you look at our great championship courses, look at our anchor sites for the USGA, you get into Wingfoot, Oakmont, Marion, the country club into Massachusetts. You're, save for Philadelphia, which could do what you want to do. You're too far north at that point. So north of the Mason-Dixon line, you're just making too big a jump into cold climate. But I did hear Tim say it doesn't mean that it's not a championship grass. And the one thing that, I can't tell you where or who, but there's a lot of these conversations being had. I've done several of these town hall meetings. This is not a one-off for Baltimore Country Club. So in your timeline to get this done, don't be surprised when you see others do it too, because it's being discussed behind the scenes and or maybe not behind the scenes. But I can't give you that information. And I had actually someone ask, I want to answer the chart well, because I have the answer to that. And I confirmed it with Andrew Green. So I'll look at my phone to make sure I wasn't off base. But they have shade concerns that they weren't willing to remove trees. So zoysia grass would be a better solution in that. It was a playability issue. Well, it was a playability decision for that membership. They were not going to cut it too tight, get a real tight lie. You can take Bermuda grass tighter. You guys have spent a lot of time talking about championship caliber golf course. So you'll get that with Bermuda grass more than zoysia. We'll play more US Opens on Bermuda grass than we will zoysia grass. And they had some POA and Bermuda pressure, in part with the shade, in part with the Bermuda that they had before they converted. So there were some chemical options at the time that you could spray on zoysia that you couldn't on Bermuda. You could actually kill Bermuda in zoysia, but those herbicides have now caught up with Bermuda grass too. But you know, Country Club of Virginia, they host a senior tour event in December and play that on Bermuda grass. You know, you go up and down coastal Virginia, that's all Bermuda grass. We're playing the junior amateur right now, Daniel Island Club. That's Bermuda grass. So it's the argument that I hear of Bermuda grass isn't a championship grass, that just doesn't carry weight. But when you get further north, and certainly the classic US Open sites, you know, the Wingfoots, the Boston, New York, Met area, you're just too far north. Maybe there's a day when the breeding catches up, but it's just too far north at this point. So was that the question, Tim? I couldn't hear. Does that answer that?
That's right. Well, it's new as far as home is probably 10 or 15 years, but it might be experiment for 10 years and not.
Is better suited for this area 3 or 4 years from now. This is a new thing, right? I mean, we've been dealing with the same grasses for so long, and now all of a sudden, these Bermuda grasses, we can grow them into Lehigh Valley. That's why.
Yeah, and I think, and reality-wise, that's true. I think the next, like with the bent grasses, we had Pencross, and now we had 007, and some of the. So I would expect that behind that there'll be Tahoma 2 or this and that. So that when that's going to be and how that's going to be, I see that's probably going to continue. You know, so you know, it's not a fad. They're going to continue to breed. They're going to try to, and people are going to continue to develop, and especially if they know there's a market for a lot of these clubs that are doing that, so that there's always going to be another one behind. Hopefully, you would think it's going to improve and stuff. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was the right thing to do.
So for me, I prefer to experts for their specialty, with their recommendations. I would suggest that based on all the research that you guys have done and that USGA has, I think my opinion.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
It seems like there's a lot of, I mean, it's probably really good, but there's some pushbacks, and it would make sense to me to put it on, if we're going to put it on the short game facility, do that first, and have a year of people walking around, people saying, I like it, we'll buy in that way, and I'm serious about, it wouldn't be perfect, there's no part for it, and I get that, but.
Few of them throw out. I'm not entirely sure how many of them have been answered. So if you just want to scroll through it real quickly. It's a reasonable suggestion. I've noticed the room has dramatically reduced. I guess this was a lot of information. I didn't think we'd be going till 8 o'clock. Why don't we do this? I think Tim started by suggesting that people walk around and look at the placards that are here. There may still be questions, but I think that certainly willing to continue to listen. As I said, tonight doesn't have to be the end all. As I said, the board will address this, but we're meeting next week. I doubt very seriously this is going to be on the agenda for next week. So we still have a bit of time to do what we think is prudent and wise. So we will do that. Tim, you didn't let these two guys talk. They're shy over there. They're hiding. And Kent, you want to?
We have a number of online questions, so I'm not sure
Okay.
how you want to handle those.
Well, I'd forgotten all about that. We had 50-some people online.
I mean, we can certainly answer by emails. I just want to
Is-
make sure that these folks have.
Why don't you take a look at those, Kent? Is there anything that hasn't been asked or addressed? Are they? Because I would imagine there's a. Because I don't want to. I apologize to those folks because. Ray, you want to say something?
By no means are we going to own it. Okay, everybody mentioned very, very good reasons why. I can sit here and give you pros and cons myself. I've been to both courses. Columbia #1 had ryegrass, so no wonder they went to home and were happy. They never even went to have any bent grass. They went right from ryegrass where they had splotches, etc. And they, that's them. I was down in Navy. Took some people down with me Monday. We didn't play the course. Brent was down there. But it's a nice grass. It looks good, but I'm not completely sold. I'll be honest with you. This is the #1 course in the state of Maryland as it is because of these gentlemen right here and our money. Number two, I'll lose my train of thought. Anyway, I'll feel better when you do this. Okay, I got an eye infection, so I know that doesn't bother me. But anyway, now I don't have to look at you, I can speak. This is what I want to tell you. The board's working very, very hard. I mean, this place is fantastic now. I know all of us love the clubhouse. Kent Johnson, what he's done for COVID and the people we've helped with food, etc., during difficult times for those less fortunate. Fantastic club with a fantastic membership. Our president, Tom Carroll, and the previous president, Marty Brunk, but Tom now, I can only tell you that he doesn't want a civil war over this. We talk about other things, but bottom line is about the grasses. The better golfers, and I apologize to the ladies and or the guys in here, the better golfers were the ones who bitched the most about the fact that in July and August, course played soft. I do find it very, very interesting now that they're the same guys that are like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know, it wasn't that bad. Things are looking pretty damn good right now, okay? And you know who you are. The realities are this. I got to make a vote. I only have one vote. You made some great points. I'm going to reiterate this. We got the top 100 golf course. We got tremendous membership, a waiting list. We've got people wanting to join here. There's no other club in the area to be a member of. The switch to the grasses is a very, very difficult decision for all of us to make. It is not a done deal. I want to tell you that these people up here work their hearts out and they believe wholeheartedly in it. But in my opinion, I've got to look at what's best for all the membership here. And to Mike's point, Brent's point, Joe Fields' point, etc., there might be better grasses coming out the road. Caves is going to bank plus. Somebody else, I don't worry about Chartwell because, other than you want to go down there and the ball sits up for those less, they can't, forget that, okay? This is the Baltimore Country Club, and I just want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, we have not made the decision. Anybody that's out there thinking it's a done deal, they don't know what they're talking about. It's BS. We have not made the decision. After being down there, now I gotta look this straight in the face. Now that I've been down there at Navy on Monday, I have to tell you, it was really impressive. It did rain that morning. Hell, we drove down in some rain, and it was dry. And that's what you want, firm and fast. But I've heard about the ball rolling into the rough from the fairways. You hit a good drive, and then it rolls into the rough. We've got a lot of rolling fairways here. I know whether it creeps or not, it doesn't make a difference. The end of the day is it's a major decision, and we have not, by any stretch of the imagination, made our decision. I'm one vote. I don't know which way it's going to go. credit. We don't want a war over this, okay? We want more research. Maybe we take a pause, okay? Maybe we look further down the road. Maybe we gotta talk to McDonald and Sons and Keith Foster, and we can't do anything next year. You know, all that has to come into play. Thank you for listening, and I'll defer back to you.
Okay, I'm going to let that be almost the last word, Ray. Mike, it's time for me to reveal what Plan B is on the financing. Ray, I got you in for 10 grand, okay?
You're in for 30.
Okay, fair enough. I really appreciate the online people. Let me acknowledge them. Kent looked at their questions. We've addressed, I think, all of them, but I don't expect the feedback to stop. And I'll come back to reiterate what Ray said. Decisions are trade-offs. When we decided to go from Rye to Bent, there were trade-offs. And one of the trade-offs is that to keep it alive in the summertime, we were going to have to be out there syringing the grass. And that was a trade-off at the time, but at least it was grass and not mud. And our responsibility from the Board of Governors, as Ray just suggested, is that we've got to evaluate these trade-offs and do what is the very best thing for the Baltimore Country Club. And I can assure you, to the best of our ability, that's what we will do from here. So I want to thank everybody. I want to continue to welcome, thank Elliot too for joining us. And I want to thank everybody for your participation.
We saw some of that creep down at Navy, but it's
I'll take that, man. Thank you very much, man. Did it great, man. Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, I'll give you a fist bump. Good job, man. Excuse me, man.
I think you're